If you believe the answer is within an arm's reach, it is. Let me explain what I mean here. This is the closest I've come to in years of getting into kind of a back and forth on social media, on Instagram. But I thought, let's not go down that road. Take a walk. Think about it. Play pros and cons with your point of view and see if in an hour, hour and a half, you still feel the same way. And I took my walk and I came back and I can tell you that I absolutely, unequivocally still feel the same way. And I want to dive into it with you. See, anytime you talk about making the most of what you have, anytime you talk about not being a victim, anytime you talk about always blaming yourself because no one else can fix your life, there's this sort of subtle, unspoken unease. It's hard to almost articulate. How can you tell people in adverse situations to go figure it out, right? Have faith. Go pick up the pieces along the way. You don't know what they've been through. You have no idea, right? There are some people out there in immense pain and suffering. Who are you to advocate for internal strength in an unfair world? Which is basically the crux of that Instagram comment that prompted me to grab the mic and yap a little bit. And in its own unique way, I think it's correct. There's merit to that, right? There's a misfortune that I just can't and don't understand. Look, I grew up and live in the West. The most difficult decision I made today was, do I make my own coffee or do I go to Starbucks? I'm just being real with you. I've always had running water. I have access to food and shelter. I grew up in a middle-class family in the suburbs of LA and then Boston. 2 parents in the home. Always had lunch in my lunchbox going to school. I'm relatively healthy, right? Minus the occasional injury or headache. I don't know what it's like to open my eyes and hope I feel well enough to function that day. That's suffering that I cannot relate to. But I know that regardless of one's pain, this has to be true, right? A choice must be made. Perhaps the most important decision one is presented with, that we are all during those times presented with. And to frame it, I'll start with a quote from Viktor Frankl. He says, to draw an analogy, a man's suffering is similar to the behavior of gas. If a certain quantity of gas is pumped into an empty chamber, it will fill the chamber completely and evenly, no matter how big the chamber. Thus, suffering completely fills the human soul and conscious mind, no matter whether the suffering is great or little. Therefore, the size of human suffering is absolutely relative. What he's saying there is that even though our suffering is not quote unquote equal, and it's certainly not, in our own lives, in our own world, it feels the same, right? Which is a strange thing to even entertain, right? That my suffering or your suffering feels the same as Jeff Bezos' suffering. It's like, how, right? They're vastly different problems, different pains. So I think, long story short, comparing is a fool's errand. We're not here to be judges of who's hurting more or why. No, I think the message is much simpler. When we're in those moments of pain, or look, maybe it's not even moments, maybe it's a continuation, right? For years, someone's been fighting or weren't given a great start. They don't have financial resources, family, friends not around, sick, you name it, right? There are a million things we go through. Question is, do you point out with anger Or do you point in with hope? Do you look to transfer your pain to others or use your internal strength to build what was once not there? And this is the message, by the way, that I've pondered and contemplated over and over and over again. It doesn't matter how I slice it and dice it, that's where I land, right? It's never beneficial to blame. Just like it's always detrimental when others clap along with you like baby seals while you're dodging accountability. It never helps for someone to say, hey, this isn't your problem. This is beyond you. You're helpless. Let's be mad together. Hey, we weren't dealt a good hand. I'm sorry. That's the way it is. Right? That in the short term might feel good because you don't have to fix the problem. You can remove accountability. But in the long term, you are hurting yourself. You are disempowering yourself, disarming yourself. Removing the one thing that can change your life, and that's personal agency. Again, when you're at that rock bottom, you have two options: own it or blame, period. And you can hear that and think, what? It's not my fault he walked out of my life. Hey, I certainly didn't give myself this health problem. Hey, I didn't pick to be born or grow up in this neighborhood. True, check. This is not about blame, and it has nothing to do with blame. It has everything to do with ownership, with empowering yourself. This is about saying, I didn't put myself here, but I sure as hell can take myself there. Not enough people are comfortable with that message, right? From every corner of life, you get the opposite, right? You have politicians saying, hey, son, the deck is stacked against you. You're powerless, but hey, vote for me and I'll help. You have, the media, you have TV showing you tragedy after tragedy, pointing fingers, blaming others, right? Let's make sure people live in fear so they have no control over their own destinations, so they feel small and helpless in a world that's bigger than them. You have social media algorithms, right? Positioning victimhood as currency. Hey, look how marginalized I am. Poor me, right, guys? Clicks, retweets, likes. That's the magic. This way of looking at the world is destroying us. It's destroying us personally. It's destroying our communities. It's destroying the fabric of society, right? You can't have a functioning society with no personal agency or individual accountability. There's just no foundation to build on. Everything starts with the individual. Everything. As the saying goes, no one is coming to save you. No one's coming to fix all your problems, even the ones you didn't create. No one's going to fix a cycle of poverty or crime or obesity. You have to want that. Now, is that complex? Yeah, absolutely. I'm not delusional enough to think that I can solve these things on a microphone. I'm not. But what I can tell you is I see its complexity the same way I see a car is complex. I can't put a car together. There's thousands of parts. But I can tell you with conviction that car is not going anywhere without the engine or motor. Just like your willingness to own the situation, your personal situation, your agency is the engine or motor in your life. You go nowhere without it. There is no vehicle without that ownership. In other words, everything revolves around that phrase, what can I personally do about it? So when you're frustrated with the current moment, or the pieces you were given. And trust me, I can empathize, man. Life is unfair. It's brutally unfair. Remember those two options. I mean, point out, blame, and beg to be saved. Or you can point in and find a way to capture light in darkness. Anytime you want to transfer accountability, you are a thief robbing yourself of your own strength. Anytime someone tells you that the world is the problem and not you, they are a distraction pointing you away from the North Star you need to follow. If you believe the answer is within an arm's reach, you are correct. Because you are that answer. No, I'm not sorry. Sure, I was ignorant back then. No question. But ignorance is not a crime. Ignorance is the foundation that we build upon. You can't be sorry for not knowing. You shouldn't be sorry for not knowing. The only real tragedy is to plant a stake in the ground and call the ignorance home. And no, I'm not sorry that I found myself in places I didn't want to be, doing things that weren't me, talking every day with people who didn't fill my cup or push me forward. But it's not the end of the world when we find ourselves walking down the wrong paths with the wrong people. It's just an invitation to step off and find the right one. In fact, the only real wrong path is the one you continue walking down knowing that it's not for you. And no, I'm not sorry. I was half the person I am now. Half as capable, half as knowledgeable, half as driven. But it's not a bad thing to look around and realize that you can be more. It's not a problem to see the reality you're living and deem it beneath your ideals. That's a beautiful thing. What would be a shame is to never open your eyes and see the possibility. To see now as a permanent fixture, not something you can control, but something you're confined to. That would be a shame. Never be sorry for where you came from. Never be sorry for what you went through. Never be sorry for the hell you're walking through now. And most importantly, never feel sorry for yourself, right? These so-called inconveniences are the bridge to something better. They are the reason you will evolve and grow and expand. Don't be sorry. Be grateful. Be ready for the second act. Excited about what will become of you. See, often we have to find ourselves in the lowest of low places before we learn to ask if there's a better view out there for us. That's just the reality. Sometimes life is about touching the hot stove before learning to avoid it. You're never dumb or less than for finding yourself looking up at an ideal. For saying, hey, there's a delta between where I am and where I want to be, and I can obtain that. You know what one of my greatest strengths has become? It's not earlier mornings or quadruple efficiency, not a biohack or a evolved daily routine. It's learning to be kind to myself. And if that seems fluffy or unimportant, I want you to picture someone never running to, but always running from. always motivated by fear. Endless examples. A mere jog on a summer afternoon was never fast enough. Other content creators, authors, writers, speakers were always better, always further along. Imaginary competition always seemed to move faster, where they were always doing more. I used to call this perpetual state of lack a chip on my shoulder. This is what kept me going, the giant shadow of failure. I can't fail, I can't fail, I can't fail, I won't fail, not me. So I'll do more and I'll push harder. And I'm not sorry about that. In fact, it was probably what I needed for that season of my life. It hardened me up, made me tougher. I think most importantly brought me to where I am today. A sort of inverse position, learning to be just as motivated from a place of abundance. You can run just as ferociously towards something as you can from something. And guess what? When you reach the finish lines, you actually appreciate them. Running not away from what I'm fearful of, but towards what lights me up. True story. Every time my YouTube channel hit some sort of subscriber milestone, for years, I'd get a note from a good friend of mine, Dave, who'd say, hey, congrats. Don't forget to celebrate the accomplishment. Every time. And I'd be, grateful for the message. But celebrate, that part I'd kind of overlook. That's nice, I'd think. But when I started to really understand the importance of that message, I started to see things differently. You have to celebrate. You celebrate because now is the magic. If you can't appreciate now, you will appreciate nothing. Doesn't mean stop, doesn't mean go easier or minimize the destination. It means remember to love the ride because you are, as the saying goes, in the midst of the good old days. Don't wait to be 90 years old to appreciate them. And I'm not, again, sorry that it took me so long to get there. Perhaps that's why I've learned to appreciate this point of view so much. I've seen the inverse. I'm not sorry I spent so much time running away from what I fear and don't want. No, I'm grateful that now I've learned to live in abundance, to run towards what lights me up. Really focusing on each step, finding gratitude in all of it. And of course, it's not always easy, right? There are days where I have to really work to see the value, but when I try, which is the point, I eventually find it. I learned this by stumbling into it. And so in your world, I have a request. Maybe you can frame it as an experiment. What if you completely cut all the sorry stuff? Stopped being sorry for your mistakes. Stop being sorry for the things you aren't happy about or the cosmic injustices you feel have occurred. And what if you started being grateful for the realization that you can change them? You started being appreciative of the fact that you're on your way to something better. Maybe in your context, running from and running to are different. But I'd be willing to bet there's a rearranging that can transform life as you currently know it. And who would have thought, that rearranging is what we come to value most. So don't be sorry about what's occurred or where you are. Be excited. Be grateful. Because life is about to begin.
Morning, and welcome to day 3. Life is about to begin. What a cool message. I really love Eddie Perino. I highly recommend that you go and check him out. Really awesome guy. And how's everyone doing today? How are the brains? You feeling a little bit overwhelmed? For the ladies in the house, we've got something special to start off the morning for you. So I hope you're ready to enjoy it. So today's a really important day. In the last 2 days, have been a lot of theory. Today, we start to get into some really practical application. And today, specifically, we start to look at what the top 1% are doing. We've spoken all week about modeling and mastery. And the whole idea is that if you want to be successful, copy a successful person. If you want to be wealthy, copy a wealthy person. Well, today, we're not only going to show you what the wealthy people are doing with regards to their portfolios, but we also are going to be introducing you to our family office. Now, most people don't even know what a family office is. That's fine. I'm going to explain it to you just now. But in simple terms, everyone in the top 1% has a family office. And the question is, if you don't have a family office, well, no problem. But I'm going to share with you the lessons that you need to know. So, yeah, I'm glad that you guys enjoyed the video. I always enjoy it. Just by the way, a little bit of sidetrack, but I tend to listen to Eddie most mornings. So I literally wake up, I go to YouTube, I click on the video. He brings out videos quite regularly. And then for me specifically, I don't know what I'm going to get. Like, I don't read the title and try and say, oh, I want to read that one or not that one. I just pick on whatever the latest thing is. And I often find it's an incredible way to start the day, great thinking, great kind of motivation in terms of the day, et cetera, et cetera. So without further ado, I think it's time to get started. And I wanted to share with you a little video. And this is specifically for the ladies in the house. This is a really, really cool video. And it's something that I'm very passionate about. It's something we've worked on for 10 years. And it's also something which we are launching this year, which we are super excited about. So enjoy.
I remember vividly how I felt when I lost my first tooth, the excitement that came with leaving it in a little box under my pillow, waiting for the tooth fairy to flutter in and wave her magic wand. I woke up filled with anticipation and can still feel the thrill of discovering a 5-rand note in the place where my tooth used to be. Even at that young age, I was contemplating how the gap in my smile was in fact an opportunity to earn extra pocket money. A gap in my smile, but also a gap in the proverbial market. There was something in that experience that made me eager to grow my money without having to wait what seemed like an age to lose my next tooth. As a mom with a smart, curious little girl of my own, I'm often inspired by the audacity and unlimited scope of her dreams, her childlike determination and fearlessness, how she's always searching for opportunities and new adventures. Even now, I'm still looking for gaps, like I did when I was her age, identifying new and exciting ways to grow my wealth. More gaps, more opportunities. I'm thrilled that I found a way to do this with Wealth Migrate. I'm now part of an exclusive circle of people who have direct access to real estate investment opportunities all over the world. Even my daughter can see our investments growing, almost as if by magic, just like that night when the tooth fairy visited me. I'm so proud of who that little girl has become. It all started with something as simple as a loose tooth. And today I can look back, having invested in diverse properties all over the world thanks to Wealth Migrate. Join us and learn from the experts that will teach you how to create financial independence. Get informed and motivated in creating your own path to financial freedom. Register today by clicking on the link. This is for young and old alike. See you there.
So ladies, what do you think? Pretty cool, eh? And to the men in the room, I'm sure you've got significant ladies in your life. So yeah, I'm a big believer that one of the next $1 billion opportunities will be empowering women with regards to wealth. And specifically, what is really important is that, let me just get my camera in the right place here. What is really important is actually there's a massive wealth transfer. So it's really going to be fascinating to watch how this is going to get across. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that little video. And if you want it, you can share it with others. Cool. So what is day 3 all about? Well, day 3 is all about building a diversified portfolio. It's all about asset allocation. So we learned yesterday about the different countries. We learned about the different currencies. We learned about the top 15 assets. As I was pointed out, apparently there were 17 assets. So you'll have to pick your 15 out of the top 17. And today it's all about starting to look at building a portfolio and about asset allocation. So what are we going to be looking at? Now, what's really interesting, and I'm going to share with you a little secret here, but 85% of your total return is going to be determined by your asset allocation. 85%. Now, that's quite important. So by the age of 65, 85%. So what I'm sharing with you today, I highly recommend you pay attention to, because it's really going to make a big difference to you. And if you're beyond 65, it doesn't matter. There's a great saying the Japanese have: the best day to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best day is today. So we've got a number of people in our mastermind in their mid to late 70s. We've even got one or two that are in their early 80s. So, you know, time is a construct that you can make up for yourself. Again, just to remind you of the tips for success. I mean, you're here, you've committed your time. So pay full attention, take notes, try and teach other people, use the community, play full on, do the exercises, commit to the action for the 5 days. You know, set yourself goals, take action, and have fun in terms of the overall process. I remind you of the resources guide. So again, if you can just chuck it in the chat box there, Alex, I'd appreciate it. But if you go to the resources guide, you'll be able to get access to all of day one's resources, all of day two's resources, and then today we will have all of day three's resources in terms of the process. So again, you just go to the link here, diversificationchallenge.com/resources in terms of that process. I do have it here already open. If I just go through, and there it actually is. So you basically got the resources. You got day one, day two, day three. So if you go to day one, you can literally click on it, and you've got the recording here, and you've got access to the action steps, and then you've got all of the different links below. You got to admit, Shane's a bit of a genius, the guy that we work with, our partner. But here we've got day two. So you've got the recording, and then you've got everything below, the resource links. You got the homework, the action steps. You got Ann Wilson. You got my book. A whole bunch of you asked for my book. You've got the passive income challenge if you want to, join that. I don't really understand why you would be here and not join that. I'm not going to lie. Then you've got the different groups, the next steps navigator. So everything's here. All the links are here, all in one place, making your life easy. And then we go to day three, and today we'll put up the recording for day three, etc., etc. Okay, I don't really know how we can make it much easier for you in terms of the process. If you haven't joined the WhatsApp group, this is kind of just where we keep you updated as to when we're starting, etc. We've got the community group. So again, if we go here and we go back to the community group, you'll see here day two. So you basically got like, where are day two? What are the action steps? And we can see the different people that have commented here. So come and be part of the equation, come and be part of the conversation in terms of that process. Okay, so prizes, winner for the homework. And this is that point, Alex, where I say to you, who is the winner for the homework, basically?
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, so give me 1 second. I am just quickly finding another name. I had 3 people, but they don't seem to be online today. So I think give me 30 seconds and I'll give you a name.
I'll come back. You can come back to me. So just reminding you that there are prizes for what we do and for action, and for people that are engaging in the chat. If you want to join the VIP, you still can. We still got 3 more VIPs, plus you get access to all the recordings, etc., in terms of the process, and that's the Q&A that we have every day. And again, you get access not only to me, but you get access to all the replays. You get access to the first module of Wealth Going Global. We kind of, $47, really, it's not going to change my life. But what we do is we find that it makes a significant impact for others. And when people pay, they pay attention. And, I could give you hundreds of testimonials in terms of all, what people say and their impact that it has for them. So what I want to remind you, and again, I would recommend you screenshot this, because this is the slide that pretty much sums up everything that we're doing over these 5 days. And what you're looking at is the focus is globally diversified passive income and portfolio growth. And then how do you do it? Well, you diversify across countries, currencies, assets, partners, and time. You can see passive income sitting in the middle. And then what do? Well, any big goal, you break it down. So you got your long-term goal, you've then got your sub-goals, and then you got your tasks and your activities in terms of the process, in terms of where we're at. And Gwen, in terms of the recording, if you go back, I did just show everyone in the resources. If I go back to the resources here, so if you go to day 2, the recording's always there. So there's the recording there for day 2. If you go back to day 1, there's the recording for day 1, and obviously day 3 will be up once it's up. So I mean, from Shane's perspective, I honestly don't know how we could make it any easier for people. In terms of day 2, it was quite simple. If you take the takeaways, it was how to understand what the top 5 countries are and where to get the data. Stop just having an opinion or asking your mate or asking an estate agent. It was about, ultimately, it was about trying to understand the models and the data so that you can find the top 5 countries. Then it was the same with the currencies. And then we spent quite a lot of time with the top 15 assets in terms of understanding the top 15 assets. What are the top 15 assets in the world? What are the assets we look at? What are the assets we don't look at? Why don't we look at them? Why don't we look at residential property? What we refer to as mom and pop investing or retail investing in terms of just buying houses or apartments. So that's really a recap for, day 2. And if we look at the homework, the silver homework was to fill in your top 5 countries. So again, you've got your sheet. You can fill in your top 5 countries. You've then got your top 5 currencies. You've then got your top 15 assets. And just by the way, if it's overwhelming, I've said to you lots of times, if you're not sure, then just copy. If you don't know yourself, then the best way is through copying, modeling, partnership. Join the Passive Income Challenge. So, I mean, if you want to get started and get results, we truly, I don't know an easier way to get you started personally. So I saw a number of people signed up yesterday. So well done to all of those that did sign up. To those of you that haven't already started investing and are not part of the Passive Income Challenge, I don't really know what else to tell you in terms of being able to get started and get results. And then, as always, share one key takeaway with the community in terms of, and again, just if I haven't said this, I don't feel like I've said this. Whenever I go and do a course, I always try and share. So, I mean, if you go to my Necker Island videos, just by the way, who would like to see my videos for Necker Island? So I've been to Necker Island twice with Richard Branson, and every day I was there, I think for 5 days each time. I don't, it wasn't a full week. It was like 5 or 6 days. So every day I made a video, and it was like, what are the main lessons I learned that day? And it's a way that I use to synthesize what I've learned. So I use an excuse that I want to share it with others, but I'm the one that's really benefiting, because what it does is it synthesizes what I learned that day, and it cements it, it anchors it. So yeah, I can see there's a couple of people that are asking to share. So I'll share them in the WhatsApp group for people. I'll put them in the community school group. But what's important here is that when you share with others, you're synthesizing what is your key takeaway. And then also what you're doing is you're helping others, because others can go, oh, wow, that's a great takeaway. I didn't pick that one up, or vice versa in terms of the overall process. And then your goals is to watch Ann Wilson. I mean, she's amazing with ETFs and the stock market. And congratulations, whoever just joined us. And then also to look at your risk tolerance. That's something that can be useful. I'm going to talk later today with our family office and the whole Enneagram and wealth. We've actually got a far more sophisticated tool that we use for our mastermind members to help them understand their investment dialogue, and who they are as a person, their risk tolerance, and actually how they sort it. And Richard said Ann Wilson is very worthwhile. I completely agree. Okay, and then finally, you've got your next steps navigator. So again, I know a number of people have met with some of the team members, but the point being is that this is a tool. It's an AI tool we use that just helps you know what to do next. So it's just a guide in terms of where we're at. And I know that Alex has gone through everything, and he would like to award the prize, the VIP upgrade, to Louis Durka. So, Louis, it's wonderful to see you here. I know that you connected with Alex yesterday, and it's wonderful to have you participating and being part of the community. So, yeah, well done to Louis. Louis is the one who has won the prize for this morning. So, congratulations, Louis. It's awesome to have you, and I look forward to seeing you being part of the VIP. Alex will make sure that he's gives you all the links in terms of that process. So I wanted to start this morning, and I wanted to start with something that I actually heard, and it was really interesting because I was watching a podcast about a month or two ago, and it was about the 3 reasons people don't get results. So generally when people don't get results, so you're investing a lot of your own time here, and the question is, are you getting the results you want? And actually, statistically, the research that's out there is really interesting, because people that don't get the results are generally, it's, I don't have the money, I don't have the knowledge, and I don't have the time. So people have a hell of a lot of excuses. Generally, we all do. I'm not blaming you. I'm exactly the same. All of us have reasons and excuses that we don't do things. But generally, the 3 major reasons that stop people from getting the results they want is, I don't have the money, I don't have the knowledge, and I don't have the time. It doesn't have to be all of them. It can just be one of them. But would you agree, like literally type in the chat box, does this resonate? Like, you think of the things you want in your life, some of the results you want, and does this resonate? Like, yep, I've used that excuse, I don't have the money, or yep, I've used that excuse, I don't have the knowledge, or yep, I've used that excuse, I don't have the time. I find the one with time is one that I use quite a lot, because I'm extremely busy, and I always have to tell myself, I'm like, yep, no, I'm too busy to be able to do that. And I always have to tell myself, and I'm sorry if I keep referring to this, but it was a massive, massive learning lesson in my life when I got to spend time with Richard Branson, because the man runs 400 companies, plus minus 400 companies. He's got a wife, he's got kids, he's got all these charity things, he's doing all this cool stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So don't tell me about Tom. As in what I mean by that is watching him. If he can figure it out, then I certainly can figure it out, if that makes sense. And so for me, I always look at it and go, okay, well, these 3 excuses. And so I wanted to share with you 3 gifts, because I think it's really important. And remember that we're here to help you get results. So today we're going to go into the family office, but most importantly, I want to help you get results. And so I need to remove some of the blockages that might be, in the way. And I can see that Augustina said health. Yeah, possibly. Look, there's lots of other things that people could have, but certainly these 3 are 3 of the ones that often stop people in terms of the process. So I want to share with you 3 personal stories of the ways that I got results. So the first one, in terms of, rather than, I don't have the money, it's more of a mindset of getting what you want. So it's about being resourceful in terms of getting what you want. And it was really interesting because it was 20 plus years ago. And I remember when I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and he spoke about it in the book. And he said, poor people and broke people always have excuses that they don't have enough money as to why they can't get what they want. And I remember thinking about that. And then Tony Robbins went on and he said, the most successful people in the world, don't have all the resources. They don't necessarily have all the time. They don't have all the money. They don't have all the knowledge. But what they do have is they're very resourceful. They're very good at coming up with ways, solving problems, finding solutions in terms of it. And a good story for this, for me, was when I told you the story on Monday where I flew to Vegas. It was $15,000. I managed to do the business mastery course. I absolutely loved it. It was incredible. And then Tony Robbins went on to tell us about his platinum group and how he was doing business mastery 2 for an exclusive group of people on his private, it's not a private island, but it's a private resort in Fiji. And only, it was exclusive and it was $50,000. I was like, are you joking? $50,000, like to go and spend a week with you in Fiji. Anyway, long story short, I just kind of knew in my intuition it was something I really needed to do. And so I found a way, and there was a 2-for-1, like you could bring a friend type thing. So I managed to convince a friend to come with me. And that's my friend there, Andrew. So that's me, a much younger version of me in 2010, and my mate Andrew and Tony Robbins. And we're on his island in Fiji. And what was so interesting is that I learned some incredible things. We were super lucky. There were only like 25 or 30 of us in the room. So I literally got to spend a week with Tony Robbins with like 30 people in the room. And because of that, I managed to agree to get the rights for his business to Africa. So there's very few people that have been in business with Tony Robbins. I have. So we got the rights for Africa. And on top of that, something else happened. And it's not something he taught me, but it was just a way of thinking. And I basically re-engineered the way that we were selling property in Australia. And because of that, I managed to figure out how to, we used to sell property off plan and only get paid like 2 years later. And I managed to re-engineer the way it happened so that we got paid 70% of the money up front. And that changed things completely because it meant that I could hire good people. It meant that I could build the business. And funny enough, I made my $50,000 back in under 2 months in the process. And it just completely changed the trajectory of our business. And the next year, so this is 2011, it was the World Cup in New Zealand. And we were literally traveling down 100 Mile Beach. I was married at the time. This was my wife and I. We were traveling down 100 Mile Beach. This was my mate and I bought a ticket for him to go to the final in Auckland at Eden Park for the World Cup. And what was so interesting is the business was running the whole time and using this new model. And although I invested the $50,000 in myself up front, I made it 10 times over in the next sort of 12 months. And the only reason I tell you the story is not to boast, but it's to impress upon you that when you're resourceful, it's amazing. And so when I take the passive income challenge as an example, like if you want passive income and if you want to make money while you sleep, and if you want to stop this horrible little red journey of kind of falling off, and you literally want to get from A to B as quickly as possible, I mean, that's why we've created the passive income challenge. We've literally done it to make it as easy as possible, 4 steps to get from A to B to be able to get you passive income. And, you know, why have we done it? Well, to get you results in 30 days, to be able to help you get a passive income in under a month, you know, to be able to earn money while you sleep, that whole proverbial, your money working for you. I mean, this is why it's basically been designed to hold your hand step by step. So not Scott with all the theory and the talking and the knowledge, but actually Alex going, do this, do this, do this, do this, so that you can basically get that result and walk you through. And then, you know, people say to us, well, why can't I do it in 2 days? You can do it in 2 days if you want. You know, it takes about 2 days to get the KYC set up. So you could do it in 2 days, but we just wanted to set people up for success. Our logic was do one thing a week for 4 weeks, and then you can achieve your objective. And then finally having the community and the accountability, which is obviously key to being able to get results. So that's what the challenge is all about. It takes literally 30 days. You've got the different steps, the 4 different steps that we kind of take you through in a very logical, you know, perspective to be able to help you get the result. And who's it for? Well, if you're an aspiring investor and you literally want to get started, you've never earned passive income before, this is the way to help you learn the ropes. If you're a seasoned investor, you're someone that's like, right, I've done this a long time, but now I really want to be able to diversify. I want to become a global citizen. Well, we've created it for you as well. And then for busy professionals, I know I got asked in the VIP room yesterday, Scott, I don't have time. Well, this is exactly why we did this. So it's quick, it's simple, it's direct, so that it helps you get the results as quickly as possible. And again, I went through this yesterday, so I'm not going to belabor the point. But in terms of the value, if you take everything you're getting the weekly webinars, you're getting the comprehensive setup guides, you're getting access to the community, you're getting the advanced optimization, you're getting the certificate, you're getting the peace of mind, you're getting the smart investing. You put it all together and it's $776. And we're not charging $776 because we want, you know, our whole thing is Zig Ziglar. We want as many people as possible to be able to experience passive income. And just by the way, I'm not Mother Teresa either. If I can help more people get passive income, if Alex can help more people get passive income, then we too can get passive income in terms of that process. The normal value of these type of challenges is $297. We're not charging that either. And I did share the story yesterday where, you know, we literally said to ourselves, well, why don't we just make it free? Why don't we just make it available to everybody? And I had an inkling. I said, you know, I don't like free. I've done free for a long time. It doesn't work. And now we got the stats to prove it. You know, when we did it for free, 352 signed up, 80 people turned up, 10 funded their wallets, 8 invested for a whopping 2.23%. And I'm sorry, I don't know about you, but I don't go to school or university and get 2.23%. That's just not how I operate in my life. So free is no longer an option, because when people pay, they pay attention. It's just like the VIP room. You know, we can have 500 people on the challenge in the free area, and we can have 50 people in the VIP room. By the way, it's always about 10%, which I always find very interesting. It's those 50 people that will get 10 times more results than all the other people that are in the free section. It's amazing. It's just the same thing over and over again. And so I always say to people is that we're not doing free. But imagine if you did invest $297 in yourself and you achieved a passive income, literally by the end of February, just per se, it's actually the middle of February, but let's just say the end of February. By the end of February, you've got a passive income. That feeling for you, would it be worth $297 for you? What about making money while you sleep? I mean, you've dreamed about it, you've heard about it, but have you actually done it? Would it be worth $297 for you? And by the way, you might have done it in rands, but you've never necessarily done it in US dollars or in pounds or in euros. What about making your money work for you 24/7? Nighttime, businesses, you know, holidays, weekends, etc., etc. Would that be worth $297? What about having someone hold your hand, simply and safely go through the process, you know, so that you can get there as quickly as possible? Would that be worth $297? And then finally, you know, or not necessarily finally, because, you know, there's two things that are most important to people, in my opinion. Time, like giving you back time, like saving you time. Would that be worth $297 to you? I always love that story of Tony Robbins. He said, you know, people wash their own dishes and clean their own clothes, etc. And Tony Robbins was like, well, you know, how much would it cost you to get someone to do that? And they were like $5 an hour or whatever the number was. He goes, cool. So then you're prepared to work for $5 an hour. And it's such a different frame around your time. Like if you could save your time, how valuable is your time? Would it be worth $297 to you? And then the last one, which, you know, is probably the most valuable to certainly me, is peace of mind and freedom. Because if it gave you the peace of mind to know that it was possible and that your freedom goal, like you're not going to be free in 30 days. Let's be very clear on that. But if you had the peace of mind to know that it was possible that you'd be able to hit your freedom goal, would it be worth $297? And so that's, you know, I'm doing this on purpose because I specifically want to help you get a result. And again, if you put it all together, it comes out at 776. We're not doing that. We're charging 97. And we're specifically charging 97 because we believe that 97 is not a lot of money. It's really not a lot of money. It's not going to change my life, trust me, or Alex's life in any way. But it's enough money just to make someone commit. It's, you know, if it was $9, you know, you might pay it and not turn up. $97, we'd rather work with 100 people that actually say, right, I'm in, I'm paying the money, and then we do what it takes, whether it's the carrot or the stick, to help them get the results. So that's where we're at. If you're interested, you can just go to that link. I can see Alex has put the link in. And I do remind you that you can also, if you're resourceful and you refer 3 friends, you can get to participate for free, because we've got our affiliate program. We're looking to build, so what we're looking to build is Trustpilot reviews. We want to show people that it is possible to get a passive income, because the more real people with the more real stories, the more impact we can have on the planet. And then we only give one chance. So you only get one chance at the price that you pay at. If you fail, then it gets more expensive. So we use pain on purpose to help people get results. And then also it's important, we can't tell you what to invest in, but it's important that you invest in the deals that pay monthly. Otherwise, you're not going to get the income within 30 days. So the first thing is that people say that they don't have the money. And I've shown you the story that I used with Tony Robbins, where I invested $50,000 and the impact that that had on my life and how resourceful I was to make that a reality. And my strong recommendation for you is that you really need to focus on the first thing, which is get what you want. Like, find a way, be resourceful. If passive income is what you want, then find a way to join the Passive Income Challenge. Be resourceful so that you can get results. The second thing is get the knowledge. So again, people like me used to think that I had to go out and read all the books and go on all the courses and get all the degrees and everything else. And then I learned that I could do it through partnership. And I actually started to learn this at a young age. So this was my first property development when I was 22 years old. I bought a house in Rondebosch, Cape Town, a 5-bedroom house with my friend. And it was interesting because we didn't have any money at the time. We had no money. And so we got the deal. We managed to organize a mortgage. We got some funding for the deposit. But now we had this house. It had zoning to build 3 stories. We could build 27 units. We thought we were super clever. But the problem was, Alex, if you could put in the affiliate link, that would be great as well. Thanks so much. And what we basically realized was that we couldn't do the development ourselves. Like although I had a degree in construction management, which was all development, etc., I'd never really done it before. So we actually partnered with a developer. So we brought the land, they brought their development expertise, and we ended up deciding not to do flats, and we did townhouses, and we built these 6 townhouses. And within 2 years, we made a profit of 2 million rand each. And that's good money when you're 24 years old, basically, in terms of the process. Now, I couldn't have done all of that on my own. I did it all through partnership. The entire thing we did through partnership. But when people tell me they don't have money, I say rubbish, because I did it myself, where I didn't have money. But we found the opportunity, we unlocked the opportunity, and we brought partners on board, and that was the profit we made by the age of 24. And then another good example of that is I showed you on Monday this whole wealth hacker concept, because you can go out and you can try and learn it all yourself, or you can literally go and learn from others and partner with others. So that's why we built the wealth hackers, because my philosophy has always been in life, like, why not just put yourself in the room where you're the dumbest, poorest person? Like, get yourself in a community where there are other people, other like-minded people. And so we originally built all the courses, and we had them all as bespoke courses, like where you could go and buy them for a specific price. But what really dawned on me last year was I was doing another course, and this lady's got an incredible resource called the Personal Development School, and she runs it more like Netflix. So you pay an amount per month, and then you get access to all the different courses, but you can go and choose the courses which suit you best. And I love that principle. So we changed to what we're going to call the Netflix model. And so I showed you yesterday our Wealth Going Global, which is literally our course. It's got 6 modules on how you can find the top 5 countries, the top 5 currencies, the top 15 assets. How do you find the partners? How do you build a plan over time? And what's really interesting is I'm giving you an overview over the 5 days. I'd like to think we're giving you a hell of a lot of value in terms of the process. But this is if you want to go deeper, if you want more substance. I mean, what you discover in that course is how to build a globally diversified passive income and have portfolio growth simply and safely without making the mistakes that most people make when trying to do it themselves. And as you know, this is the sheet that you are working through this week. And the whole idea is to help you make sure that this sheet is fully comprehensive and that you've got the understanding. So it starts with the power of clarity, which is all about understanding your why. Then it's about the countries, and I've already shown you yesterday, it's about going much deeper into the countries and the research so that it shows you how to choose the top 5 countries. Then it's about the currencies, and that's the whole module that James Painter does in terms of the currencies, so that you can learn from James Painter in terms of all the different currencies. Then you go into the assets, and it's in this assets part that I explain more about the primary and secondary market, asset allocation. We touched on this yesterday, top 15 most recognized assets, the 8 golden rules, and then also the top 15 assets according to the data. Then it's all about partners. And tomorrow we're going to talk about partners, but it's the power of partnership and how do you invest globally with confidence. And then it's about time, and it's about bringing it all together and constructing a portfolio and a plan. Most people want a plan, a robust financial plan. And that's really what becomes important. And so it's about putting together your plan. And again, I'm going to help you on Friday do this. But again, if you want to go deeper and actually have all the resources and put an investor strategy sheet together. And then finally, we top it all off with a bonus session, which is smart investing. And that's where we bring it all together with technology in terms of that process. So that's what Wealth Going Global is. It's effectively the 10-year upgrade on my book, Property Going Global. And the reason I had to do an upgrade was when I wrote this book, it was all about residential property. But in 2014, like I told you, I started doing commercial property. So for the last 10 years, we've done primarily commercial property. And then in 2019, I started doing other alternative assets. And so the Wealth Going Global is the 10-year upgrade because it's not only residential, it's also commercial and alternative assets. When you look at the value of it, well, people paid $30 just for the book 11 years ago. When people came on buyers trips, they spent $5,000 to fly to America or UK or Australia to come on a buyer's trip with us. When we've done due diligence, we've invested sometimes upwards of $250,000 just to do due diligence on big projects. And then with our mastermind, it's not this anymore, but when we started, it was $5,000 just to be able to join the mastermind. And if you put it all together, if you put all the different modules and everything that you get within Wealth Going Global, the value is over $8,000. So you got $8,000 worth of value. And what's interesting for us is that with using the Wealth Hackers concept, even though there's $8,000 worth of value, hundreds of people paid $497. So this was the price. This was the retail price. And hundreds of people have done this course, and they paid $497 to be able to do this course. Then you've got, and again, I did show you this yesterday, but let me just go back to it quickly. If I go into Wealth Hackers, and if I go to the classroom, so here you got Wealth Going Global, and you basically got all the different modules that I just mentioned here within the classroom. Then the next thing that we built, so that's all about having the right information. Remember, I've told you all along, you've got to have the right information and the right partners. So this is all about the right information. Then we built the next thing, which was asset class mastery. And this was actually getting access to all the right partners. So in the top 15 different asset classes, every single one of these, there's a 90-minute to 2-hour module where you can learn about that asset class. But the most important thing, and you learned this yesterday with Gary as an example in London Residential, and is that in every asset class, we're not just teaching you the theory, but we're introducing you to a world-class partner that is actually doing it, and you can partner alongside them. So it's really important. Like if you want to go to Harvard, you can go do courses. That's easy. This is not courses. This is giving you access to the right partners, the best partners around the world in all of these different sectors. And again, hundreds of people have, the value is over just close to $15,000, but hundreds of people have actually paid $1,997 for Asset Mastery. And again, if you go to Asset Mastery, it's sitting here and it's got all the different assets. You can literally go through any of them: structured notes, multifamily, industrial, co-living, London residential, private equity, venture capital, mixed use, data centers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that just gives you an example of everything that is put together. Now, for us, when we looked at the two of them, when we put the two of them together, the total value of that's $2,500. And that, I'm not giving you a sales pitch here. I'm not telling you, run to the back of the room or any of that shit. I'm not interested in any of that. That's what hundreds of people have actually paid, is $2,494. But what we decided to do with our Wealth Hacker concept was to ultimately provide, and whenever we create courses, just keep adding them to the process. So you got Wealth Going Global at a value of $8,000. You got Asset Mastery at a value of $14,000. You've then got Clem Sunter. So I've had the privilege of working directly with Clem Sunter, and we've actually got the modules with Clem Sunter plus the Q&A with Clem Sunter. We've got the 6 pillars to wealth, which again, I'm actually going to share with you as a gift today, where it's our family office taking, so they only take our mastermind members through what are the 6 pillars to wealth. What do they teach their family office clients? What do they teach their top 1%? But there's a course on the 6 pillars to wealth. Then you got the Enneagram and wealth. This is amazing. Like, this is unbelievable. I'll share a little bit about it just now, later today. But in simple terms, the Enneagram is the oldest tool out there. It's over 5,000 years old profiling tool to understand who you are. There's 27 different types. But what we've done, and you can't get this anywhere else in the world, with our family office, is we've married it together with wealth. So it now talks to your wealth profile. Who are you? Who are you as an individual? So there's an entire course on the Enneagram and wealth. There's a course on how to teach your children about money. So So I don't know how many of you would like to teach your children about money, but there's actually a course. A good friend of mine, Paul, who's based out of Ireland, incredible guy, but there's a course on how to teach your children about money. There's a course from David Lipschitz on generational wealth. So this is really important. Okay, so fine, you've made some money and now you want to protect your capital, but how do you hand it over to your children? And how do you possibly hand it over to your children's children? How do you set up your legacy right? And, you know, it's interesting with David, he only works with billion-dollar families out of India and America. He's ex-McKinsey's, but we managed to get access to him. And, you know, this was a course that we put together with him. Then this is one that I get asked all the time. What about tax and structuring and estate duties? So we actually did a course with our family office, Garth, who's the CEO and founder of our family office, and he put it together in terms of what do you need to know about tax? What do you need to know about structuring? What do you need to know about estate duties? Now, obviously, it's important for people, you know, each person has, and that's why at a mastermind level, everyone has a bespoke, you know, this is my situation and this is my solution. But there's an overall knowledge that you need to know. And as Garth said, you know, what he shared in this course would be, you know, you'd pay $20,000 with your eyes closed if you went to tax and structuring attorneys. Then you got our entire wealth weekend. So we actually filmed all 3 days. So day one was the 6 mega trends. So what's happening around the world? What are the 6 mega trends? Day 2 was the Enneagram and wealth. So it was a full workshop on the Enneagram wealth. And day 3 was generational wealth. And you've got access to all of that. It was all professionally recorded in terms of the process. And then lastly, you got exclusive access to the community, which is the Wealth Hacker community. So what's interesting is that if you go to the Wealth Hackers, we've literally built it to make it affordable. So you've got all the cool stuff here. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. I'm not going to go into all the details, but there's a background that you can put onto your laptop. There's a manifesto. So we've actually got a manifesto for the Wealth Hackers. I'll read this later to you if you're interested. In terms of it, we got the Wealth Code, which is, you know, so there's a whole bunch of things, useful resources. There's a whole bunch of extra resources, etc., that you've got here. You've got all the different courses that I've already mentioned to you. So you can see there's 6 pillars to wealth, the Enneagram wealth, how to teach your children money, generational wealth, effective tax and structuring, the wealth weekend, the Enneagram and wealth. You know, so there's actually even more courses I've added. So as I add new courses, the top 10 lessons I've learned in personal development, 16 macro trends. So whenever we have new courses, we keep adding them to them. You've got the community in terms of the overall process. So you've got access to the community. And then you've also got the calendar. And every single Friday at lunchtime, I make myself available to do a live Q&A. So you can ask any questions you want around anything, any of the courses, the investments or anything. So it's basically access to me every week on a Friday, basically. So that's what the Wealth Hackers is all about. It's over $60,000 worth of value. And our whole philosophy, I've said this so many times, Zig Ziglar, you can have anything you want if you help enough other people get what they want. So believe it or not, although it's worth $60,000 worth of value, we actually offer it to people for $37 a month. Yep, you heard me right, $37 a month. It's an offer that we do specifically for people that join the challenge. We kind of do it on purpose to make it a no-brainer. It's the whole Netflix of wealth. And I always say to people, if you take just the value of Wealth Going Global and Asset Mastery, which is $2,500, it would take you 6.5 years. 6.5 years. So we've literally done it on purpose. It's a no-brainer in terms of the offer. You get access to all the different courses. I've shown you already the Enneagram and wealth. It's just incredible. You literally can't get access to this anywhere else in the world. You've got the effective tax and structuring, estate duties, how to earn passive income. You've got David Lipschitz, the essential components to building and sustaining generational wealth, aligning wealth with life goals and family values, insights into managing financial, social, and experimental capital, techniques for effective family communication and decision-making, practical advice for navigating family dynamics and intergenerational relationships, and steps to creating lasting change that benefits future generations. And you also get access to our live events. So if we do VIP like we're doing this week, you would get all Wealth Hackers get automatic upgrade. So it's kind of a no-brainer. And again, that's why we want the Wealth Hackers to be a no-brainer for people in terms of that process. So if I do a VIP with Clem Santa, you get automatic access to that. So you're paying your $37 a month. You're getting access to the live community. You're getting access to me in the Q&A, and you're also getting access to any of the VIP options we're doing. You get the community-based learning, so you get to learn and grow together. And we're also looking to put a whole bunch of competitions together in terms of that process. So if you want to go to the link, it's literally diversificationchallenge.com/wealth hackers. And just in terms of putting our money where our mouth is, there's actually a 30-day money-back guarantee. So I'm not, to my knowledge, I actually don't know of anyone that's ever done that. It's a bit of, as I said, it's a bit of a no-brainer. So you're getting access to everything. It's all here. It's literally $37 a month. And if you want to have a further 20% discount, if you pay for it, someone's just joined us there. Congratulations to whoever you are. But if you pay for it annually, you get a further 20% discount. So I don't know, it works out at about $350 or something, but you basically save yourself an additional 20%. So I'll be honest with you, I don't know what else we could do to make this more affordable for people in terms of giving you access to all the different learnings and the courses. And we've done it on purpose because we want people to be able to get access to the foundational knowledge in terms of that process. So if it is something of interest to you, you can go to the diversificationchallenge.com/wealth hackers. It's $37 a month, or you can pay for it upfront for the year and save yourself 20%. But you get access to all the trainings, the live Q&As, which I do every Friday. You've got the VIP access, you've got the community-based learning, you've got the competitions. And then the other thing that's really important is we also grandfather people in. So we actually started at $27. Well, the lowest we've done is actually $17.50, $18. And whatever you invest at, so if you start at $37, every time we add new courses, we put the price up. So from the last challenge, we've already put the price up by $10. So when we did this in October, it was $27. It's now $37. Every time we add new courses, we put the price up because we believe the value increases. And but you stay at the same price. So if you pay $37 now, in 10 years' time, you'll still be paying $37, even if others are paying a couple of $100. Does that make sense? It's called grandfathering. That there's significant value in getting involved now, because then you retain the price forever. And if you're not sure on what value you'll get out of it, I would suggest you just go and look at the links. There's so many people that have put stuff on Trustpilot, videos, YouTube, you name it. You can literally go and look at all of them and see what others have to say about the different courses. The one thing I would, well done, someone else has just joined. One thing that I think is important is that we've had everything from highly sophisticated business people to chartered accountants. Actually, a lot of chartered accountants have done the Wealth Going Global, more than I expected, quite frankly. We've had teachers, we've had plumbers, we've had farmers, we've had doctors. So we've had all different walks of life. And one of the feedback I get often is that I'm quite good at taking complex, difficult things to understand and making them more simple. Just in terms of that process. So if that is of something of interest to you, we tend to say that the passive income challenge is the economy class, the Wealth Hackers is business class, and I'll tell you later about the mastermind. So, well done, someone else. So how do you get results? You get what you want and you get the knowledge. And I don't really know how else to show you through partnership. But I want to take partnership to another level. Now, neither myself nor our family office nor anyone that's presenting today is giving you, advice here. But what we are going to share with you is what are the top 1% doing and how can you copy them? And that's what day 3 is all about. So I remind you of the formula. We want to diversify across countries, currencies, assets, partners, and time. And it's all about building the passive income at the middle. But how do we build asset allocation? And it's really interesting because there's multiple people out there. There's a great friend of mine, Mark, that has got a company called the International Academy of Wealth, and he's got the pyramid. And Wilson also has the pyramid. Apparently, the pyramid is the strongest structure built by man. And, so ultimately you want your wealth, to be built. And whether it's portfolio construction or pyramid, it's the same thing. But you take all the different assets and they have different returns and they have different timing. But the one that I like most is what's called the wealth report. And this wealth report comes out every year, and it's run by Knight Frank. And they go out and they interview the wealthiest people in the world. They interview all the family offices and the investment banks and everything else. And if you look at it here, I do have the report from last year, but unfortunately, they didn't do this exact breakdown for portfolio construction. And so I'm still using the one from the year before. But if you look here, there's 580,000 plus minus high net worth population. And what's interesting is that, so this is the 580,000 wealthiest people in the world. And now it went up to 744. So it's growing basically. But what they did, which is the most important thing I wanted to share with you. And by the way, for our mastermind, I actually got the lady that runs the report to come and talk to our mastermind members about the report, about the research, about their findings. But for the purposes of this challenge, I just wanted to share with you what the breakdown was of their assets. So reminding you that most people, your financial advisors, most people will have 70% of their portfolio in the stock market, in equities, and 30% in bonds. Yes or no? Just give me a yes or no if you agree with that. Okay, so I can see a lot of yeses coming in here. If you disagree with me, go for it. I love a debate. It's one of my favorite things to do at school was debating. So that's interesting. So 99% of us are doing what the financial industry tells us to do, which is that we've got 70% of our money in equities and we've got 30% in bonds. Well, let's look here as to what the top 1% are doing, the wealthiest people in the world. They've got 32% of their money in primary and secondary homes. They've got 26% in equities. They've got 21% in commercial property. They've got 17% in bonds. They've got 9% in private equity. They've got 8% in commercial property indirectly through funds. They've got 7% in other. They've got 5% in commercial property through REITs, real estate investment trusts. They got 5% in passion, so like art, cars, wine. They got 3% in gold, and they got 2% in crypto. Don't you think it's funny? So if you add this up, that's so if we look at the primary market, okay, they got 32% plus 21%, so that is 53%. Private equity is 9%, so they're on 62%. Commercial property through funds, we'll leave that out. Other, we're not sure what that is. Commercial property through REITs, we'll leave that out. This alternatives, they would 62%, so that's 67%. Gold, 70%, and crypto, 2%. So they've got 72% of their assets. 72% of their assets are being held in primary markets. So remember I told you yesterday, primary is something existing, like it's an existing asset. And they've only got 28% in secondary markets, the stock market. Don't you find that interesting? Completely opposite to what you're told to do. I'd like to see some people's comments on what you think about this. Yeah, John, I think you said, I think lots include more cash so they can be paid. I'm not 100% sure if I understand what you're saying, but the point being is that it's a lot about income and building different income streams. So a lot of what is here is to build different income streams. So let's take this a step further. And most people, well, let me ask quickly, who here has heard of a family office before? So just if you give me a yes or a no. I'm just interested. So I got a no, yes, yes, no, yes, yes, no. Guys, it's sort of half. Okay. So just quickly, I went to Investopedia and said, what is a family office? And it said it's a private wealth management firm established for ultra high net worth family that provides a family with a selection of personalized services that include investment management, financial planning, estate tax planning, philanthropic investing, concierge services, and more. Who needs a family office? Well, in the past, it was only people that had a huge amount of money. So generally, you needed about $250 million or more. And by the way, we've got a client right now who's part of our mastermind. And one of the reasons he joined was that he went to try and get a family office in Switzerland. And they literally said their minimum threshold is $250 million. Now, anyone who joins our mastermind gets access to our family office, just by the way. So we've democratized access to a family office as well. But let's go into what a family office is. I've got a video for you here where I did a video with Garth, who's the CEO and founder of the family office we partner with. And he basically explains what a family office is. It's a short little video, but I think it's really important. And what I would suggest you do is while you're sitting here, not only say to yourself, like, wow, what is the difference between a family office and my financial advisor? But also ask yourself, are you getting this level of service? Are you getting this level of input? And what difference would it make if you had these guys as your partners? So I'm super excited to be here with Garth Wellman, who's the co-founder and CEO of Callio Capital. Garth, I first met you 2012, 2013. You were helping one of the wealthiest clients that I'd ever met and helped invested. And I was fascinated by what you do. In fact, I'd never even heard of a family office until I met you. And I bet you that most of the people on this challenge have never even heard of a family office either. So can we just start with what is a family office? And in your case, a multi-family office. What is it like? Because most people have never even heard of it.
Yeah, hi, Scott. Yeah, great to have worked with you over the years. Yeah, I think Callio was actually one of the first people to coin the phrase multi-family office. The family office is typically a full financial management of a high net worth individual's affairs. Typically, a wealthy person would set up a family office to administer everything in-house. You would bring in, legal attorneys, private equity, and construct a full suite of investment services from, offshore structuring to offshore legal advice. So we set up a family office to be an outsourced full financial services provider outside of the scope of just investment management. And that's what we brought to the table. And we realized that we wouldn't do that for a single family. And that was where we said we became a multi-family office. Our services were well outside of the scope of what a financial planner would do.
Well, talk to us a little bit about that, because most people, including me, only really understand a financial planner or / an investment bank. Maybe you've been invited to the private banking of investment banking, etc. What is the difference? And I'd love to ask you a question. I also want to give context from what I've experienced with all of our clients. But what is the difference from what people are used to what they get when they come through the Callio, family office?
Oh, look, a financial planner is one service of probably 15 or 20 that a family office does. A financial planner effectively looks at a person's wealth preservation or their wealth creation. He goes, how do I create more wealth if a person hasn't yet got sufficient wealth? And he goes to the typical listed market space. And if he works for an institution, he goes to his employer's institution and offers their products as a solution to create wealth. The more sophisticated financial planner is the one that's working with the high net worth and saying, well, here's how we can preserve wealth. And that preservation of wealth then comes in the form again of the same financial products, sometimes slightly more sophisticated, a little bit more on the offshore side. He's not often involved in the actual legal structuring, and that is just outsourced by the bank to alternative companies. So very little of what a sophisticated financial planner does really goes into him being involved in the taxation, the immigration, the international tax planning, international business, corporate advisory, resolving tax issues, staying current. So I think a financial advisor is largely connected to creating wealth and using listed investments, and protecting wealth using listed investments, which is just one very small part of what a family office really does and is capable of doing with in-house services.
It's so interesting because it reminds me just of a couple of clients, and a couple of people are going to meet these clients over the next couple of days, whether it's Cynthia or Abdul or Niels. But just the context I get from a bunch of people is, firstly, they were used to having lots of things all over the place. In fact, quite a lot of chaos and hassle. And the beauty that they love is that they can bring it all under one roof and actually have everything looked at. So whether they own a house in England or a house in America, for the first time ever, actually consolidate everything and have a sort of one plan, not this disparate plan all over the place with multiple advisors. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I found really interesting, and Derek, who's actually a farmer, came up to meet with the Calio team face to face, and his words were phenomenal. And I always laugh at that, because why he said phenomenal, he said, I spent my whole life trying to find someone that I could, literally go to with financial advice, but with a holistic approach, not just stick me in the box. I'm just like, this is a product that everyone else is selling. And actually someone that could sit and understand me, my family, my needs, my wants, and ultimately come up with a bespoke solution. They're just two examples of many, many people that you've helped. But I like to sort of give people a little bit of context of why it's different. Just because we're used to a box of chocolates doesn't mean that there's actually not a much better solution out there in terms of it. So it sort of brings me on to the last question that I would have for you. And I know that Anthony will go into all the substance of how it all works, so people get the substance now. But what I wanted to understand from you was the feedback I get from a lot of people when they meet with you, they meet with Anthony, they come along to the mastermind, they learn and listen, and they go, but it sounds too good to be true. If you're working with some of the wealthiest families, around the world, why would you work with me? What's the reason for that? Why are you even here, helping me on this presentation?
Yeah, Scott, I've said it before. You can build scalable businesses, and I'm both a financial person and an entrepreneur. But what I started picking up is, I don't think good advice should be the domain of just the super wealthy. Okay. And one of the greatest problems the world faces is wealth disparity. Where 99% of the wealth is held in 1% of the world's population hands. And we know that's one of the biggest problems that has to change. But the same with advice. The wealthier are, the higher the quality of the advice, the more access you have to deals, the more access you have to create more wealth. So, in our universe, we want to create opportunities for a much broader, much more scalable suite of wealth and investors, for example. So I really want to see people that are hungry to learn, to create wealth, and to generate, economies like in a country like South Africa, where economics and business and wealth creation is so important right now. So for me, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, if we can teach the secrets of that 1% to 25, 30% more people, we create a much more sustainable world and a much more sustainable economy. So, yeah, I think that's where, where you and I have worked really well together is to create scalable but high-end information being accessible to other people rather than just the 1%. Yeah. And also, with the 65 clients we have, 70 clients, it grows all the time, I haven't counted, families that we have, so much opportunity exists within that for us to spread that opportunity and create a real symbiotic environment for wealth creation and transfer of knowledge.
Well, look, just from my side, I'm deeply grateful. We've been on this journey now for the best part of 18 months in terms of the actual mastermind and everything. Anthony turns up every month and teaches us, Selwyn and, so many of your team members have added so much value. And my learning, and I think I know quite a lot, but but I realized I barely knew what I didn't know. So it's been phenomenal, this growth. And one of the things that I appreciate most is when I find, people that join the mastermind, they seem to have it all. They seem to know everything already. And then they come and meet you and they just have their minds blown of like what's possible. So I deeply appreciate the partnership. I deeply appreciate what you just said in terms of people getting access to it. And I look forward to others learning about what a family office is and, more importantly, how it can impact in their lives. So just a huge amount of gratitude to you and your team. Thank you for sharing it with others.
Oh, wonderful, Scott. Thank you for that. And yeah, it's been a great journey, and it's always so rewarding to hear compliments from your clients. And yeah, long may we continue to, teach and grow people.
Awesome, guys. Thanks so much, mate. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
So what do you think? What would it be like having them in your corner? Just interested. Let me know in the chat box quickly. I'm always fascinated what people think. So one of the things that if you remember back to that overwhelm thing where I said, like, I want to teach you what, and actually show you, you might not even know what you didn't know. Christelle said it's like a butler, housekeeper, accountant, and travel agent being wrapped into one. Yeah, I think it's for me, it's what I'm mainly trying to show you is that you got to kind of generally got like your financial advisor, and it's so much at a different level to the financial advisor in terms of that process. And I think the question I would have for everyone is, would you like them in your corner? Would you like them helping you look at your tax and your structuring and looking at your current assets, and are they protected, and is there overlap, and are you properly diversified, and what is your asset allocation, and are you working your assets? Like, firstly, you want to protect them, but secondly, are you working them as as best as possible so that you're getting the best results in terms of that process? I think that's really important. I do want to just Loretta said, yeah, I'm a bit confused. Ann Wilson said yesterday led me to believe that equities must be a biggest portion. Again, it should be a good portion of your investments, but it shouldn't be all your investments. And I'm not going to repeat what I said yesterday, but with the secondary market, the financial industry puts all your money into the secondary market because that's the only way they know how to make money in terms of the process. But where the real wealthy people are putting their money and protecting their money is in the primary market. So yeah, in terms of that. So let's share with you quickly here. Am I showing my screen? You're seeing the family office screen. I just want to check. Yep. So every month our family office takes our mastermind clients through the different asset classes and what's happening, and are they going up? Are they going down? What do we need to know about the different asset classes so that we can make better decisions? And this is something that Anthony and Garth said to our mastermind members.
This doesn't change, guys. Asset allocation, and this is not all of the asset classes we work with, but asset allocation is going to account for 85% of your return and is the fundamental building blocks of asset management and a financial plan that's going to produce income or anything. But Anthony's going to talk to this, and this will give you very specific kind of views around the returns, the averages, and where we think the value lies.
So just important what he said there. 85% of your long-term returns come down to your portfolio construction. So I've got a gift that I want to share with you now. And this is something that we've done twice for our mastermind members. And I wanted to share it as a gift for you. We did this recently now in November last year, so 2 months ago. And what Anthony and I spoke about, and I know I talk about this in the introduction, so I'm not going to repeat myself, but in simple terms, when they sit down with one of their clients that are joining their family office, they teach them that there are 6 pillars to wealth. And what's important is that it's all about setting people up for success. And so just as a matter of interest, who would like to see the presentation that Anthony and Garth give on the 6 pillars to wealth that is only available to people that if you get to join the family office? Now, to put in perspective, they manage about 65 to 70 clients. They manage over $700 million, which if you do the simple maths means that you've got to have at least $10 million plus generally to be partnering with them. Again, I repeat, if you join our mastermind, you get automatic access. But I want to share with you what they shared with their clients. And this for me is all about, one of the things Garth and I are very aligned with is a democratization. So making things available to people. And why I'm sharing this with you is, and why they allowed me to share this with you, is that this is democratization of knowledge. So it's about an hour long. Enjoy it. It's incredible. I've seen it multiple times, and every single time I learn more from what Anthony has to share. And to give you the backstory behind it, was I was sitting with Anthony and Garth. They were talking about asset allocation, and they said something really pivotal. They said 85% of your total returns are going to come down to your portfolio construction. And again, a lot of us just assume these things. We say to ourselves, okay, well, I know what Anthony means. And when I actually kind of asked the questions, I said, what does portfolio construction actually mean? And Anthony said, no, well, there's 6 pillars to, portfolio construction. And so back in October last year, Anthony actually shared with our mastermind community what are those 6 pillars to portfolio construction. And then when we did the wealth weekend in, when was it now? March, we actually spent the entire weekend just going into each one of these 6 pillars. So I want to be very clear. This is a topic that we could spend 1 hour on, we could spend 10 hours on, or we could spend 10 days on, in terms of the process. And I think, Anthony, when I reached out to you and just getting feedback from a number of the mastermind members, was this is one of those moments where, to some extent, if you've seen this, then repetition is the mother of skill, because effectively it's a 1-year upgrade. If you haven't seen it, it's an invaluable pillars and foundations that you need to know. And I think there's 2 things that I would ask people to really be looking at. One is, what does this mean to me? And do I have my pillars in place? And if not, what do I need to do? If you've already heard the talk, and if you haven't, then it's a case of, well, what do I need to know? And it gives you a much better idea of how we work with our family office to help you set you up for success. And then I think there's one third component that I just said to Anthony, because I know you always like flippantly throw it out there with the buckets. And it was the people that only got the wealth weekend that got the whole bucket thing. So for the mastermind members, I want to go a little bit deeper around what are those 6 pillars and how do you use your buckets, etc. But it's without further ado that I'm deeply excited to go back to you, Anthony, because I know what you're about to share is literally the foundations. I love metaphors of buildings. And if you're going to build a tall foundation, you have to have a strong foundation. And, why we keep repeating this is because it's the strength of your foundation which is going to help build your building,
100%. Thank you, Scott. I think that was a great introduction. Can I go now? You basically summarized the whole thing.
You're all good, dude. That's over to you. I'm going to switch my camera off because it's all about you now.
100%. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. I've made some updates to these slides, actually, as we kind of incorporate new things into the process. So there are 1 or 2 new parts of it, but ultimately what we're dealing with here, as Scott said, is portfolio construction and the fundamentals which get you 85% of your returns. In the presentation, I will touch on 6 key pillars. Firstly, one's time horizon. Secondly, the risk tolerance. One's asset allocation, diversification, personal outcomes / goals, and then the monitoring, measuring, and rebalancing. The chart at the bottom, the multifaceted approach, is something I'll touch on now. It ultimately relies on 3 pillars to build that portfolio construction, of which these 6 topics slot in. But ultimately, you've got your Enneagram profile, you've got your asset liability modeling, and your individual circumstances. Those come together to form the portfolio construction. Today, I'll touch on the asset liability model side of things, as well as the individual circumstances. As most of you know, the Enneagram side of it is equally as important, but I won't dive into too much detail around that. That has been handled or touched on in other webinars. And like Scott said, there are recordings and stuff as a refresher for that. When we look at time horizon, it's probably one of the key driving forces behind planning and investments, right? So you always hear, time is your best friend when it comes to investing. The longer your time horizon, the longer your ability to compound your capital, and the greater that sum of capital can become at a future date. When we look at the time horizon, it's important to understand our current situation relative to where we want to be. To do this, we use something called an asset liability model. As the name suggests, the asset liability model looks at your current assets relative to your liabilities or future liabilities. Typically, those future liabilities are in the form of income requirements or income drawdowns that you will need to take at retirement from your portfolio. And the asset liability model is all about planning for retirement or planning for some kind of future event now. It doesn't need to be retirement. Some people are already in retirement. It can be legacy. It can be saving for certain things, which I'll touch on later. But ultimately, it's the framework or the base from which we work on to build portfolios. When we look at defining the parameters of the asset liability model, it's also important. So what I've done here is I've included snapshots around those parameters, right? So I think when I run through this, my goal is for you to understand the effect that each of these parameters have on the asset liability model. Now, I've taken a very basic example just to get the point across. Obviously, this is all unique and tailor-made to each individual. We typically find that no one client is the same. Everyone has different parameters or outcomes or goals that they're trying to achieve. So it's not a one-size-fits-all, but by understanding the different parameters, you get a much better understanding of how this works and what it relies on. So firstly, we look at the current age. In this example, we've assumed Joe Soap is 45 years old. They plan to retire around 65, and they have protected years of 35. Protected years, I think current age and retirement age are very self-explanatory. Protected years is an important one because ultimately we're always looking to build sustainability in these portfolios or in your portfolio up until age 99 or age 100, right? The reason why we do that is because modern medicine has got really good and some people are actually living to those ages. Importantly, we're always looking to take care of the breadwinner first and make sure they've got sustainability of their capital or enough capital to see them through to those later years. And secondly, if one were to pass away prior to age 99 or age 100, then the leftover portion essentially starts to form part of your legacy or your inheritance. So those who have dependents or kids or things like that, by planning to the later years, you're naturally taking care of that bucket, right? The years of saving, in this particular example, is the difference between the retirement age and the current age. The model assumes that over those 20 years, you are in a financial position to contribute to your portfolio or at a bare minimum not withdraw from your portfolio, so not make physical capital withdrawals in that time period. Things like interest and dividends and stuff like that are slightly different. That's obviously an interest earned from the portfolio and can be accessed, but ultimately you don't want to put pressure on the portfolio until such a point that you need to, and typically that point is retirement. Now, retirement can mean two things. It can be physically when you retire from employment, or it can be a point at which you start to make withdrawals from the portfolio. They don't need to be the same thing, but more importantly, it needs to be a point where the portfolio starts to come under pressure, or in other words, starts to physically make income payments. We make some other assumptions. We look at inflation. In this example, I've got inflation at 4%. I'll talk you through what that means shortly. We assume a return pre-retirement, i.e. those 20 years from age 45 up until age 65. We make an assumption there around the return. And then we also make a return assumption post-retirement. And that will be essentially from age 65 in this example up until age 99 or 100. The reason why we scale back that return in post-retirement is due to we just try and dial back the risk profile a little bit. So maybe as an assumption, you're a pure equity investor up until you retire, and then you need to kind of take your foot off the gas a little bit because you can't have as much volatility in the portfolio or assume as much risk. So we just tend to dial it back there a little bit. Again, everyone's unique circumstances will differ. There's no one size fits all. In terms of our inflation number, inflation in the model assumes the increase in income that you derive from your portfolio on an annual basis. So in other words, each year, we assume that income amount will increase by inflation, right? The reason why we do that is to ensure that when you're drawing that income in the future, let's say 10 years down the line, you are not being eroded by the effects of inflation. So your purchasing power on that income amount is not diminishing. It's important to try and keep pace with inflation so that your purchasing power remains the same. You don't want to find yourself in a situation where you haven't taken into account inflation and 10, 20, 30 years down the road, your income amount that was sufficient today is not enough to buy you a loaf of bread. So we're always taking into account that inflation scenario as well. That will jump around on current inflation numbers, but ultimately what you're looking for there is some kind of backdated average, A, or B, an amount that for you personally makes sense. I hope that's clear. Moving to the right-hand side, again, in this assumption, we assume that Joe's soap requires an annual income of R1 million. That annual income will kick in at retirement, so at age 65. Remember, they've got 20 years until they get there, so they're in a position to save and contribute to the portfolio and not withdraw from it. We assume annual contributions, again, in this scenario, of 240,000 Rand per annum. I mean, if this isn't clear, these are all thumbs up values, but I think the importance here is just around what effects this has over a prolonged period of time with these assumptions. And then we assume Joe Soap has a current saving balance of 3 million. That current savings balance is important because that is the capital amount that is doing the heavy lifting or is assumed to be generating some kind of return. And I think, again, in terms of portfolio construction, when we do a lot of the initial analysis work, it's understanding whether or not the current assets are in a position to generate the return assumptions, right? So we could see return assumptions scaled up or dialed back depending on what that current balance sheet looks like. So again, in this scenario, we've got 3 million. Ignore the rest for now. I'll show you how this all plays out, essentially up until age 99 in the next slide. So jumping to the next slide, you'll see there's a couple of rows here, namely year, age, salary contribution, withdrawal, growth, balance, and return. So remember, we started with a capital amount of 3 million. You can see that in the top right. Joe Soap is age 45. You will notice that there is a contribution of 240,000. That contribution is also increasing each year by inflation. You will notice that there is no withdrawal. So in other words, Joe Soap is not retired. They don't need to draw capital down from the portfolio. So that withdrawal only kicks in at a future date. Again, an important characteristic there, because ultimately those 20 years leading up to retirement are the years in which you can compound and grow the portfolio up into a significant amount so that you can live off it, right? So you can draw the income down from it. The growth is the actual monetary amount each year of the return. And then we've got our return assumption on the right-hand side, that 10%. So you can see that after year one, our 3 million has a 10% return on it, so it's growing by 300,000 plus an additional contribution of 240,000 that we spoke about in our assumptions. That gives you a capital value at the end of year one of 3.5 million, and you can see very quickly after that the effects of compounding kicking in. Again, keep in mind when we assume these kind of return assumptions, they're linear in the model, meaning that they grow on an annual basis by that exact amount. The reality of markets and investments, as we all know, are somewhat different to that. You'll have years where you do greater than that return assumption, and you'll have years where you do worse than that assumption. What we're looking for when we define our return assumptions is a long-term return that's viable. So let's say long-term equity markets are doing 10% in dollars. That becomes somewhat of a viable return if Joe Soap needs to target pure equity returns. We wouldn't go and put in there 20% because it makes the model look good. So it's important to keep some kind of realistic approach to that, and that's also fleshed out, like I said, by doing an in-depth balance sheet analysis and just understanding the current assets. Some assets won't keep pace with that. Others will generate higher returns or can potentially generate higher returns. Point being that it needs to be accurate, A, and B, it won't happen in a straight line. We're looking for that average over an extended period of time. All right, I'm going to jump to the next slide. The next slide is where it gets a little bit more interesting. As you'll notice on the left-hand side, Joe Soap has now turned 65. He's retired, and he starts to make withdrawals from his portfolio. Notice the withdrawal amount at just under 2.2 million. Originally, our assumption was that Joe Soap would take R1 million out in today's terms. That over 20 years, that R1 million has doubled. That R1 million has doubled and some. So again, that's as a result of the inflation assumption, and we do that again as a reminder, just to make sure that your purchasing power at time of retirement or at this future date is kept the same. So you can start to see there that the pressure as a result of the compounding from inflation becomes a lot higher. So again, important to have the assets in a position to be able to sustain those kind of drawdown levels going into the future. I put the balance here of 3 million just as a reminder of what it was 20 odd years ago. That's now growing to 40 million or 39 million. Again, just highlighting the benefits of time, A, and B, benefits of compounding over a prolonged period of time. In that 20-year window, you would have more than likely gone through multiple different market cycles, which I'll touch on the next slide. But again, you're looking for that average annualized return over a prolonged period of time to be in line with your earlier assumptions. You can then start to see the withdrawal and the effect that has on the capital balance. So you can see it increases to around 42.5 million at age 73 or year 29. And then you can see the effects of that increased drawdown starting to wear away at the capital base, ultimately reaching a point where if things were to play out identically to the assumptions here, Joe's Soap would be running out of money between age 91 and 92. The reality of these asset liability models is they're obviously not set in stone, but it becomes a fundamental driving point or fundamental thing to understand, so that when it comes to portfolio construction, you are positioning the portfolio in such a way that it can get as close to these assumptions as possible, right? Joe's Soap is not covered or not sustainable up until age 99, which means that one of the assumptions is too high or too low. Too high would be the income drawdown. So his portfolio is just actually not big enough to stomach that withdrawal. And too low would be the return assumptions. He needs to try and target a higher return because that will take some pressure off these numbers. So again, I'm not going into a return debate here around what's high and what's low and what's realistic and what's not. I'm more just trying to illustrate how the parameters have an impact. Now, I typically would try and position this differently. I would typically try and get sustainability much closer to 99. But again, this becomes a personal thing, and it becomes a personal kind of discussion around the likelihood of living to these later years, as well as if there are any dependents and things like that. So again, it's not a one size fits all. You might have something in the family that, I mean, no one's lived past 80, for argument's sake, and 92 would be considered well into the future. But I think you get the point around how this works, how the parameters are defined, and how it's still very tailored to each person's unique circumstances. Some people need much lower returns because their income drawdown relative to the size of their portfolio is small. Others require much higher. It all depends on what you're trying to achieve. Alrighty, moving on to the second pillar. It looks at one's risk tolerance. I make some notes here that it's largely driven by one's time horizon. We look at market cycles on average being between 5 to 7 years. And then we also note that personal goals here play a large role in determining the levels of risk one can take. So remember, when we say risk is largely driven by time horizon, it's because of these market cycles, right? So if you've got 10, 15, 20, 30 years until retirement, by definition, you can stomach volatility. So you can stomach the ups and downs of markets over that period of time because you know that you will more than likely see different economic events throughout that time period. And should markets decrease significantly, take 2022 as an example, you can stomach that drawdown because you're not reliant on that capital in the near future. Right, so you can wait for 2023, 2024 for markets to recover and go back into positive territory. So it's all got to do with your savings and your investments that you allocate to. There should be some kind of time horizon associated with it so that you can understand the level of risk you can take. If you know that in 1 year from now, you want to use X amount of money to put a deposit on a house or buy a car or anything like that, you should not be going into high risk investments or investments that need a longer time horizon to pay out, i.e. equity markets, i.e. private equity, those kind of things, because you've got an imbalance there and it's going to lead to trouble. So that's really what we're talking about there. I show a chart of a typical business cycle and stock market cycle. You can see there you've got your expansions, you've got your recessions and your recoveries, and that is the typical kind of ebbs and flows of the markets. You don't want to find yourself in a position where if you need income in 2 years' time, you're investing 100% into equity markets, they experience a bear market, they drop down in value, and you're forced to pull an income from an asset that has decreased in value, right? That's kind of key here, is matching your time horizon to specific assets, and in turn using that to determine some kind of risk tolerance. Now, we are not fans of what we call risk modeling. Hence, we use the asset liability modeling. Risk modeling asks various questions around your perceived idea around how you view risk. So it asks you, do you mind volatility? Yes. Okay, well then you must only invest in income funds. It doesn't take into account any kind of future liability or time horizons or anything like that. So I think we definitely find that the asset liability model is a more powerful tool, because we allow the life that the client wants to live to drive the investment thesis and to drive the portfolio construction. All right. The chart on the bottom right, it's quite an obvious one, but I'll touch on it. Obviously, when you're looking at your risk versus return, you'll always typically find that the higher the risk, the higher the potential return, and the lower the risk, the lower the return. So it's just important to always keep that in the back of your mind. You can't kind of want to shoot the lights out, but take no risk with it. You're always going to typically find that positive correlation between risk and return. And it's an important thing to wrap your mind around when you kind of entering this journey of investment. All right, moving on to the asset allocation. So consider where we are in the process. We've looked at the asset liability model. We've started to get a bit of a compass or a roadmap and understand what one is trying to achieve. We have an idea around what kind of returns are needed in order to make those parameters a reality. And we start to get to the more nitty-gritty construction side of things and making sure that assets are aligned to those particular objectives or return parameters, right? So the one is very reliant on the other, right? So you can't really have a scenario in which you need a return of 8%, but you just want to sit in US Treasury bonds the rest of your life, right? Because you won't. There's going to be a mismatch at some point. And that's where the asset liability modeling is used to construct portfolios, because it tries to position or tries to give the person constructing the portfolio a good idea of what they need to achieve, right? We look at that through the use of asset allocation. Like I just mentioned, this is largely driven by the parameters of the ALM. A client does not need to take any unnecessary risks if they only need a return of X%, right? A lower return. They shouldn't then be chasing high-flying high risk opportunities, because they're actually just putting their capital at risk for no real reason, right? They can afford to take a much lower risk profile and have much more security around that capital. The asset allocation is dependent on the time horizon of the investor. That was something that we looked at previously. You're not going to be going into high risk opportunities if you don't have the necessary time horizon to stomach the volatility that can come with it. And it can also be influenced by one's personal goals. Again, if you've got a near-term goal relative to a long-term goal, you're not going to be wanting to take as much risk on that near term as you would be comfortable taking on something that's longer term. So it's always important to have some kind of idea around the length of investment and what you're trying to achieve. To highlight this, I use three indexes here, or three different investments. I use them as a proxy almost to understand risk relative to return. The first one I use is the MSCI World. In this particular example, it is an exchange traded fund. And I use that again as a proxy for the global stock market, right? So this would represent a pure equity investment. I look to understand the return of that investment over the last 5 years on an annualized basis. This is all in US dollars, just by the way. That has a return of 12.21%. So that would be my again, I'm using the word proxy a lot, but that would be my proxy for global equity returns. That comes in at a standard deviation or risk of 17.95. So when you look at it relative to the others, which I'll dive into more detail now, you can immediately see that if we're using standard deviation as a measure of risk, that ranks high up on the risk scale, right? The next one, Bloomberg Global Aggregate. that is the global bond market. And again, I use that as a proxy for bonds. That has a return of negative 1.64. It doesn't really prove the point nicely, but unfortunately, the bond market has been in disarray for a little bit, and the annualized returns over the last 5 years are slightly negative. But you can see that step down in risk profile when you're looking at the standard deviation. So that drops to a standard deviation of 7.8%. And you can see there that you're dialing back the return profile, but with it, you're dialing back the risk profile. So you're seeing that correlation between risk and return. The last one is again, it's a treasury bond ETF. It's very short dated, so it is essentially US cash. So it aligns to US interest rates annualized over the last 5 years. That comes in at 2.3%. More importantly, for the example, you can see that risk profile is almost zero, right? And the reason for that is because it is cash. So I'm just giving you an idea around risk relative to return, and how one would step that down or step it up as needed. On the right-hand side, just a picture there on different asset classes. We've got equity, fixed income, cash equivalents, and alternatives. So we've looked at essentially equity, fixed income, and cash. Alternatives are a bit harder to model on these kind of views. Alternatives will typically house things like private equity and that kind of stuff, because it's private in nature. The data to get on it is less easy to come by. But you would typically see that probably around pure equity type risk, maybe slightly higher, maybe slightly lower, depending on the actual investment and the operator. That always plays a large role in it. And you would typically see returns there or thereabouts, again, depending on the different opportunity and the underlying asset class within alternatives. You could see some deviation on that, but it would definitely kind of push to the upper end of the scale. And again, it's all about understanding that relative to what you're trying to achieve when you're building or constructing the portfolio. That's crucial to understand in this whole process. Step number 4, we look at diversification. So we look to understand the diversifying holdings across different asset classes and sub-asset classes. Bottom left, I've got a graphic there that just looks at the main asset classes. Again, equities, bonds, alternatives, commodities, and cash equivalents. And then getting into a bit more of the specifics around the sub-asset classes. Obviously, multiple sub-asset classes. We deal with them quite a bit, or we did deal with them earlier in the commentary when we look at the sub-asset classes. But really, there's a lot to play with here when it comes to portfolio construction and making sure that one is exposed to the correct elements from a diversification point of view. We look at bonds, we look at alternatives. Like I said just now, you see your private equity and things like that starting to come into the foreground there. We look at commodities, and we look at cash and cash equivalents. So again, it's just important to understand your blend, your diversification, and your asset allocation, always relative to what you're trying to achieve, right? So again, if you need higher returns, it might not be the best play to diversify with something like bonds, right? Because you're just not going to get the numbers that you want. Alternatively, if you don't require a very high return, bonds might have the perfect place in your portfolio to help smooth volatility and generate a little bit of upside. So again, it's all about understanding the playing field and the parameters based off step 1, which is the asset liability model, and then translating that through into the portfolio construction. Second note there I add is the ability to add alpha, which is outperformance above a specific benchmark. So something higher, a return higher than the benchmark, via manager selection and style allocation. So they're just highlighting the importance of making sure that that sub-asset class box is ticked and diversified nicely, because you can get some outperformance from that. And typically, it can be quite an easy box to tick in the greater scheme of things. Is this diversification box? It's often considered in the investment world as the free lunch. So by diversifying, you can generate additional returns, or at least decrease your risk profile and still keep pace with the return that you're trying to achieve. And then lastly, I add a note there, just saying the use of active managers to shift between different styles of investing, which I'll talk about shortly. What I want to touch on now.
Anthony, sorry, mate. Yeah. Just considering we're part of the Diversification Mastermind, I'd love to just repeat what you just said there. Diversification is the free lunch in terms of investment terms. I just think it's quite important that I re-highlight, because often people hear important things, but they don't let it sink in. So just repeat what you said there again, and just give a little bit of essence to what you mean by that.
So some people often refer to diversification as the free lunch of investing. And most people say there's no free lunch in investing. So basically saying that by diversifying, it's something very easy to do. And one can do it very easily, and it can have a significant positive impact on one's portfolio simply by diversifying.
Awesome. Thanks, dude. Sorry for interrupting.
Cool, no stress. And I think I'll use that to kind of just talk to the chart on the right. I know a lot of people really enjoy this chart, but it really talks to diversification, and more specifically, it talks to the inclusion of alternatives or private equity as a sub-asset class under alternatives in one's portfolio. Starting on the bottom right of this chart, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but what we're looking at there is we're looking at a portfolio that's comprised of 30% bonds and 70% stocks, right? 0% private equity. The bottom axis of this chart looks at one's standard deviation / risk, and the left-hand side of the chart, y-axis, if I'm not mistaken, taking me back to varsity days here, looks at the annualized return. And at an allocation of 30% bonds, 70% stocks, you're pretty much at around 10.5% risk, but you're on the lowest return spectrum. So you're at around 8.5%. As we start to move up the chart, the inclusion to private equity grows, right? So you're starting to get to 5%, 10% private equity, 15%, right up to 20% private equity. Now, at 20% private equity, you can see you actually decrease your risk or standard deviation. So that drops down to between 9 and 9.5, but your return profile has increased. So again, this talks to the free lunch around diversification and increasing your potential annualized return whilst decreasing risk. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. I would argue that you could, again, it's person specific, but we typically comfortable playing in that 20 to 30% private equity space. Again, depending on the underlying clients and the underlying opportunities, but one could probably extend that 20% to around 30%. The chart is a little bit outdated. Bond market, like I said, actually post this 2018, if you think about the previous chart, being 5 years annualized, has not been great. But again, the bond market becomes your ability to allocate to other things. In this example, you could increase your equity exposure, things like that. But again, going back to step one, that's driven by your asset liability model and what you're actually trying to achieve. There's no need taking undue risk if you don't need to. It just doesn't make sense unless you need to, or you're trying to achieve something that requires you to do that. So again, using step one as the roadmap or the compass to this portfolio construction part of the equation. In the next slide, I just look at ways here of again, potentially ways to generate a free lunch, potentially ways to generate some outperformance, ways to use active managers to rotate between the different styles or sub-asset classes. This is not a debate around active managers versus passive exchange traded funds. It's merely to show a point. For those that have dealt with me in the past, you'll know that we actually have a very agnostic approach towards active and passive managers, and we believe that each one has a role to play within a portfolio. So I don't want to get into that debate now. I just want to show that in our first example, we look at a random active manager relative to its benchmark, which is the S&P 500, which happens to be one of the biggest indexes in the world. And we just understand that what role manager selection can play, right? So you essentially have the active manager in the first column generating a return annualized in US dollars over the last 5 years of 17.3. The benchmark S&P 500 generating a return of 15.23. So you can see there that there is some outperformance just looking at return. If I move to the next block, which is probably a more interesting one for me, it looks at the standard deviation, which, as we discussed previously, is just one of the many measures for risk. And it shows that over that same period of time, the active manager taking on slightly lower levels of risk relative to the index. The third block looks at alpha. Alpha is another word for outperformance. It numerically aims to understand what that outperformance looks like relative to risk. And as we can see, this person is doing a higher return at lower levels of risk. So he's rewarded with a positive alpha number there of around 4. And then I show relative return as well as correlation. Relative return for this example is not overly important. Correlation looks at how close the holdings or the movements are relative to the particular index. So you can see that it is quite high, it is quite close, but there's been some key decisions along this 5-year journey that have resulted in outperformance at lower levels of risk. So again, just highlighting the ability to use instruments here within the portfolio construction that can also increase return and decrease risk. So similar to the chart we looked at before with private equity as an example, this just shows how one can do it in the listed market space as well. Again, not trying to say which one is better. We typically use both in portfolios, but important to understand the role that they play. Even if you're just using an active manager, not necessarily to outperform, you're looking at outperformance as a bonus, but rather to protect on the downside through those lower levels of risk. So if you can save a few percent when markets move down, that's also viewed as outperformance, right? Because you're not going all the way down the same way another holding would. And then again, just looking at another example at the bottom, instead here, I look at a manager who uses the MSCI World as their benchmark. So a bit more global approach compared to a US-centric benchmark like the S&P 500. And again, these kind of opportunities exist where you've got guys historically generating higher returns at lower levels of risk. We can see that once again with a strong alpha. Okay, moving on. In this section, you will notice the inclusion there at the bottom of what Scott affectionately refers to as the bucket approach, which I'll touch on shortly. But really, number 5 looks at the individual client or person's personal outcome and goals. Here it's important, like I said earlier, to establish or determine what this particular pool of capital is trying to achieve, right? If it's a short-term goal, if it's a long-term goal, they're going to have different characteristics to it. You're going to invest that money slightly differently using the process previously discussed. So again, very important to understand what that outcome is or what you're trying to achieve. Again, any defined outcomes other than retirement, defined being the key word there. I want to buy a car in 3, 5, 7 years, or a house, or a yacht, or a jet, whatever that might look like for you. It's important to understand that or make someone aware of that when you're entering into these planning stages, because there is different ways to treat that. The most popular one is the last one. Again, this is personal scenario dependent. It's not for everyone. It is for a large amount of people, but it's not for everyone. This looks at retirees and the bucket approach. So in a nutshell, we break this down into 3 buckets or portfolios or baskets, whatever you want to call it. And those three buckets are the income bucket, the essential capital bucket, and the growth bucket. Now, these are already broken down into time horizons, right? So we had quite a bit of discussions about this last time, but I try and give those time horizons there. Income bucket targets 3 to 5 years, essential capital bucket targets 5 to 7 years, and the growth bucket targets 7 years plus. Now, for retirees, the asset liability model process looks a little bit different, right? And for people who have used the earlier version and have built up to retirement, when retirement kicks in, things typically change. Right, and they move into this bucket approach. And what the bucket approach tries to achieve is that it knows that you're going to require an income from the portfolio, right? And the goal of it is to separate different pools of capital for different outcomes or goals or objectives or whatever you want to call it. But ultimately, that income bucket of 3 to 5 years is there to provide you with income for that time period, right? It is typically invested into things that are less volatile, that are less risky, and with it generate a slightly lower return, right? So you want to, in other words, protect that capital at all costs, right? Because that is your pool of capital for the next 5 years where you're going to be drawing an income from. You don't want to wake up one morning and markets have fallen out of bed, and all of a sudden you're forced to draw income off a capital balance that has greatly reduced in capital, right? Because the long-term effects of that, depending on the drawdown, can be catastrophic, right? You're decreasing the capital amount, and in the future, when the market recovers, your recovery is off a much lower capital base. So your monetary return on that capital is significantly reduced, right? So that would be a worst case scenario. So you want to ensure that that capital is safe and it's protected by being in the correct investments for that particular bucket. When we move to the essential capital bucket, we have a time horizon there of roughly 5 to 7 years. The reason why we do that is because it correlates quite closely with the average market cycle. And it means that if we've got our income bucket protected for 5 years, we know that the rest of the portfolio, we can increase the risk profile a little bit, right? Because we understand that with income taken care of, you have the ability to stomach increased volatility in your essential capital bucket, meaning that you can target slightly higher returns because you can have more risk on that portfolio. So it's important to understand how the role that they each play. In that essential capital bucket, let's just use it loosely here. In the income bucket, you would be targeting things like income funds, investments that have allocation to cash, as well as a little bit of bonds, maybe pref shares in property, those kind of relatively low risk investments that are going to generate a decent return for the amount of risk that you take. When you move into the essential capital bucket, you can increase that risk profile. Maybe you might look at the inclusion there of some equity. Historically, we know that equities generate the highest return, but they also are the most volatile. So we can look to include some equities there to bump up the return profile in that essential capital bucket. Lastly, in the growth bucket, this is a portion of capital that's set aside for 7 years and longer. It's our high risk, it's our high growth, it's our high return bucket. Typically, you'll find things like private equity with the longer term time horizons in this bucket. You'll find things like equity funds, that kind of stuff. That will all find its way into the growth bucket, because we know that with our other two buckets ticked, we don't need to be reliant on that bucket for that 7 years and longer time period. It can be invested, and it can go through its whole investment life cycle without us having to worry about drawing down any kind of income from it. So whether it goes up or down throughout that 7-year period, or whilst it goes up and down through that 7-year cycle, one doesn't need to wake up and stress about losing money or drawing down from a lower capital base. What happens post these time horizons is somewhat of a waterfall effect. Once your income bucket is depleted, the idea is that your essential capital portfolio would have moved through its investment cycle, and profits can be trimmed from that essential capital bucket and topped up into the income bucket. That would then essentially start the next cycle. When growth assets start to mature at the end of their life cycle, profits are then trimmed from that and allocated to the essential capital bucket. And then that as I'm sure you can understand, that kind of kicks off the process or the cycle again. And you've got this continuous waterfall effect where you're constantly taken care of from an income point of view, and you're positioning your assets in the right categories, so you're giving them the highest likelihood of success. The worst thing that you can do is kind of interrupt a particular asset's life cycle and make rash decisions, and start to chop and change or pull money out when it hasn't kind of worked through its full life cycle. All right, I'm hoping that makes sense. In terms of the asset liability model, when you plan for something like this, your parameters change in that you will be making different assumptions on the different pools of capital, and you will be basing the size of the pool of capital off your income drawdown. So income is always going to be the key kind of driver of this whole process, and therefore the size of your portfolio and the size of the bucket will vary based off your personal situation, right? And then we assign different return assumptions based off the different buckets and based off the portfolio construction strategy for each different bucket. All right. Moving forward onto the last.
Anthony, just before you go, did you see Mike's question about the 3 buckets?
I didn't know.
I'll read it to you quickly. He said, in which of the 3 buckets would a retired person place Scott's property deals? E.g., a data center in Asia, a commercial property in the US that already has a tenant paying, a mixed use in Germany.
Yeah, good question. I don't know all of those deals off the top of my head. I'm assuming their time horizon is probably north of 7 years or thereabout. And because of that, they would go into the growth bucket. Again, it's private equity in general is somewhat of an illiquid asset class. So you're not going to place it in your income bucket knowing that the income or interest payments are not sufficient to match your monthly or annual income requirement, because you're not going to be able to draw capital down if you need to. So because of that, it starts to push out the time horizon, and it's better suited to something like essential capital or growth. If that time horizon was more in the 5 to 7 year space, relatively low risk investment, good interest or income characteristics associated to it, then maybe it would fall more in the essential capital bucket. But importantly, it's understanding the nature of the underlying asset and its time horizon to group it in the right place.
Let's just while we're on this, let's just because I think it's actually a great question. So like if we take ABF, the Austin Business Finance 3-year investment, income producing deal, or the Manhattan deal where it was a debt deal, 18 months, purely income, where would you put those?
The ABF loan and Manhattan would more than likely form part of the income portfolio. Again, personal circumstances around whether or not that interest rate is covering the full income requirements or not. Maybe they're used as a supplement to something else that can be leaned on for additional drawdown. But typically they would form part of that bucket. I think the next one that you mentioned was the German property deal. That, if I'm not mistaken, has a time to maturity of between 5 and 7 years, probably on the lower side of that. So you would be grouping that in the essential capital bucket. Another key differentiator there between the two is one is debt that pays an interest rate. The other is equity that one can expect some kind of equity return or equity upside to it. So equity, when there's that compoundability, it starts to creep its way into the essential capital portfolio. Again, whether there's a supplement there around the income side of it going into the income bucket or the income portion of that particular deal is again on a personal circumstance base, or whether that income is used to reinvest into something else is also debatable, again on personal circumstances.
Perfect, thank you.
Cool. Okay, moving on to the last slide. Fairly straightforward, fairly self-explanatory. Just looks at the monitoring, measuring, and rebalancing. Obviously important here to kick the tires, make sure that performance is being monitored relative to benchmarks on a quarterly and annual basis. Quarterly is probably a bit premature. Again, it's something that you want to keep an eye on, but you don't want to be looking at it all the time, right? Markets move up, markets move down. Things like private equity remain relatively static in their pricing for a prolonged period of time. So you don't need to look at it from an ALM point of view. You don't need to look at it too frequently. But obviously just important to make sure that you've got a grip on everything. If there are any steam trains heading for you, the ability to rebalance and reposition ahead of that is obviously always a great idea, and you can only do that if you've got a handle on what's going on. Secondly, monitoring performance relative to the financial plan and ALM. Like I just said, this can be done at longer intervals due to market cycles. You might have a year like 2022 where markets are down. It's really not going to help reevaluating these things on a monthly basis. It's much better to do it now once you've seen the recovery play out, and just make sure that on an annualized basis, one is kind of there or thereabout where they need to be. If there are any changes to circumstances, it's important to identify those and readjust the ALM parameters and remodel this. Let's say you intend on retiring earlier, or you intend on giving one of your grandkids some money or anything like that, any kind of parameters that can affect the ALM. It's important just to make note of them and adjust or change things if need be, because they can have a material impact on the way things look going forward. Lastly, rebalance the portfolio if there have been any significant changes in the parameters, or if specific targets have been met, reallocate to investments that offer greater upside potential. So again, if a pool of capital has been removed for a property purchase, but it actually did better than expected, and there's some left over, reallocate something like that if there's need to move between sectors or sub asset classes or things like that, then that obviously must also be done. But I think, like I said, this is pretty straightforward and self-explanatory. And that is it, Scott.
There's a question here from Mike where he said, so if I invest, so a lot of information, and I know people are saying quite overwhelming. I get that. In terms of the people in the Wealth Hackers will get access to the Q&A and stuff afterwards as well. So let me just stop sharing there quickly. But hopefully that made some sense. And I'm very conscious of the fact that I'm sort of sitting here going, maybe I shouldn't play this. This is a free challenge. Maybe it's too much. We're giving away too much value for free. We're overwhelming people, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a part of me that's like, I should play it. And there's a part of me that says I shouldn't play it. But what I'm trying to do on purpose, and I promised you on Monday that I would do this, is that I wanted to share with you the things that you need to know. And I wanted to share with you what the top 1% are doing. And my logic is, well, if we don't share it with you and if we don't show you what they're doing, then you'll never know what you don't know. So it's a catch-22. I'm not quite sure. Now, if someone joins us and they join the mastermind, then they will go on this personal journey. They'll literally personally sit with Anthony. They'll personally get their asset liability modeling. And I think it's quite important. I've got a little video here from a guy called Niels, who will share his own personal experience of what it means. Because I think if I bring you, so let me share my slides again. I shared with you there were the 3 things that people, as to why they don't get results. And can you remember this morning what they were? So let me get the chat room up quickly so I can see what people are saying. So again, I remind you, the first one was I don't have the money. Second one is I don't have the knowledge. And the third one is I don't have the time. Now you'd be fascinated how many times people say to us in the mastermind, I was like, I'd love to join the mastermind, but I don't have the time. And I'm like, it's fascinating for me because you want passive income so that you have freedom and you can have your time back, but you don't have the time to invest to make that reality. And people kind of say to me, well, how much time is it? And I say, well, it's probably about 3 hours a month. And my logic is if you don't have 3 hours a month to invest in something, it's never going to happen. Nothing, no matter what it is you want in life, fitness, health, sport, business, wealth, investing, it makes no difference. If you don't have 3 hours a month to invest in something, it's never, ever going to happen in terms of that process. So what I wanted to share with you was an important story of how to get results. And I wanted to share this video with you because this is of Niels. And Niels and his wife, Catherine, are extremely busy. They had a whole, they had a property in England, a property in America, and they had they've gone a whole bunch of different financial advisors, and they were super frustrated. It was super complex, very difficult. And they were actually just stuck. They didn't know what to do. And they didn't understand the financial language. Neither of them are accountants. Saw some people saying they didn't do CAs. They were neither. They were in the medical industry. And I want to share this video with you because I think this video from Niels sums up what it's like to have a partner. And again, I love sharing with you real people and real stories. And you can see here, just before I share the video, you can see here, I used to be in the dark and now it's completely liberating, or it's liberating basically. So let's share with you the video that Niels went through here, which I think is extremely valuable for you. And for me, this is a classic example of real people, real stories. So all through this week, I'm sharing with you videos of, the lessons you need to learn, but I'm also sharing with you videos of people that are actually doing it. So here is Niels, and this was his explanation of the journey. Tell us a little bit about your journey in that process, because this is an overwhelming space. You arrive, people talk a funny lingo. No one like you're almost too embarrassed to ask the question because you don't know what to ask. What's it been like for you, going through that, experience, and also, you and your wife have been trying to invest and you've done a lot of stuff, but what's it been like sort of starting to clarify and understand this language of investment,
Hey, good morning. Morning, Scott, Anthony, Shane. Yes, sorry for being late. I had urgent meeting this morning.
You were
But
late.
I'm here. I'm
We're all
here.
good. We're all good. You're on time, and we can hear you. Michael joined us on Monday, and we couldn't hear him, so it's all good.
Yeah, yes. Look, our journey with you is like 3 or 4 months. I mean, I think I must give some background here just to explain why we joined the mastermind group in the first place. I mean,
Yep.
It goes back. There's basically 2 reasons. We joined the group over the last, I would say, past 9 years. We basically started investing or doing international investments. Now, when we started off, we saw a lot of specialists, trust specialists, international financial experts, and lawyers and all kinds, because we wanted to set up a structure that we can basically use going forward with all our investments. But the end result, for several reasons, is that they basically all said that, no, you don't have enough to invest, your portfolio is too small, and you should rather invest in your own names, which we did. But this comes to a problem because, by 2022, we basically had 3 financial advisors. We had PSG, we had Brenthurst, we had Anchor, we had property in the USA through a company there, lots of tax issues. We had investments going on in the UK. And we basically realized that it's actually all over the show. It's chaotic. So we were looking for a solution and someone to help us with this. And that is when we joined 1 or 2 of your webinars. But if you remember correctly, we basically joined 2 webinars and then I joined the mastermind group, because at that stage, I already knew what I want. And we really needed more info and knowledge about the asset classes and alternative investments. And I think it was August or September when we got introduced to Calio Capital. And so in general, I would say our experience with Calio was very, very positive. And I'll explain to you why. With other advisors we had in the past, is they were all nice people and they know what they're doing in their small field, but they are normally one of hundreds of advisors in a company, but they are not the decision makers. And typically what you get is you don't ever get a holistic view. You never get advice on taxes. You never get advice on where to go, how to do this. Nobody takes your hand and help you. They'll just refer you to someone in the company with some knowledge about something, but they don't know where you're going. And it became really frustrating. And that brings me back to Calio. I always, when I went to the Calio meeting, it was an in-person meeting with Garth and Anthony. We always had, back of our minds, the thing that, yes, okay, this is just going to be the typical financial advisor. We hope it wasn't like that, but that's what you expect. You're going to go through the things, you're going to end up paying commission, and you're probably never going to get advice, and they're never going to take your hand and help you. And we really needed help and advice. And there's 4 things that really stood out for me. The first thing was, on our first meeting, Garth and Anthony was there in person. It was in Johannesburg. And that was something new for us. I mean, we've never had this. We know they are very, very busy. And we know they are some of the decision makers in Calio. But this is something that stuck with us, because it's very difficult to work with employees that only know something about this small field. I mean, you have 2 people that got loads of experience, international experience. They connected. They understand what's happening in the US. They understand what's happening in the UK, tax implications. So we were quite impressed. So then Anthony took us through basically through all our portfolios. He made a summary of all our assets, all our investment in shares, ETFs, unit trust funds. And although we really knew this, we saw it ourselves, but the picture that he put on the table, the summary basically confirmed what we always knew. And that was that a big percentage, I can't remember, 45% of all our investments was basically overlapping. We were not really diversified. We knew this, but it was actually worse than we thought. And to see it on paper was really a fantastic thing. And funny enough, as I always say, as I told my wife the other night, is that we did the same with the previous advisors. We gave them all our data. We gave them our share portfolios. We gave them info into our assets in the US and the UK. They never made a summary like this. They never even considered it, because in the end, they invested in exactly the same things. Overlapping shares, overlapping ETFs. And that was our frustration all the time. And Anthony gave us a very good summary. It took a lot of work, I'm sure of that, and that we really appreciated. So then they basically presented us with a proposal of how we should structure these things, what we can do, how can we remove all this duplication. And they even gave us advice on our property in the USA, which we really appreciate. For the first time, someone basically comes up with a plan and put their names behind it, because the other advisors normally just do whatever the company tells them or what is best practice at that stage. So we found that very positive.
Also, Niels, there's also, sorry to butt in, but there's also very few people that can talk cross-border. So like they're very good at talking about their box, but suddenly
yes.
property in Texas, and it's like, oh no, sorry, we don't do that. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
no, exactly. That's a huge problem. I mean, there's implications in everything. And it's easy to tell people to, go to speak to this specialist or that specialist. But in the end of the day, we ended up taking all the decisions. They never took any decisions, and they really didn't guide us. So this was different for us. Someone is trying to tell you what to do and why, and take responsibility with you. I found that very positive. And then, Anthony and especially Garth discussed the tax implications of these moves. What's going to happen when you move these portfolios, when you sell your shares and you move it to Intel? How can they help us to do this to avoid unnecessary taxes? They even gave us some advice on our US property and how we should go forward. So all four of these things basically for me was new. I've never experienced this. Now, because we knew why we came onto Mastermind and what we wanted, it was an easy decision for us. And we decided to go with Galileo. And we are basically now, within the last week or two, we've almost transferred most of the portfolio. The last few documents was handed in last week. We're almost ready for the share trading. So yes, I think in the next 3 or 4 weeks, everything will be in place. We're also busy with our property in the US and England. It's a bit longer process, but we know exactly where we want to be and where we're going. Of course, in the end of the day, the proof is in the pudding. I can only tell you in 6 months or a year or so if it was worth it. But this is the first time we feel that someone can actually look at our things holistically, summarize it for us, come up with a positive plan and back it with their own names, and then take your hand and help you to do this. Nobody's perfect. There's always administration issues and things that has to happen, and this take a bit longer and that goes. But I would say the overall process of Galileo was exceptional.
Awesome.
Much better than we had.
No, that's fantastic, and I appreciate you giving the feedback. And I fully acknowledge what you're saying, Niels. The proof's in the pudding and everything else. But one of the things that I wanted to share was more your human experience of being through, not the financial experience, the human experience of, again, we all kind of lost in the woods and not knowing what to do. And everyone we go talk to, particularly if we're wanting to go international, there's no one that has a holistic overview. They all try and stick you in these boxes, no matter what the boxes are. And so what I've always appreciated when I hear your story and other people's stories, no, it's a holistic experience, and it kind of it speaks more to the human part, which is the peace of mind and the okay, hang on, I've got someone who can kind of hold my hand and come up with it, So I just wanted to kind of talk to that. And you wouldn't have heard because you weren't on earlier, but Derek, who was a farmer, literally used the word phenomenal 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It was the same thing. Like, for decades, he'd been trying to look for someone to hold his hand, and now he finally has it. And, for me, it's not, Calio is not for everyone. I get that. And we're not trying to, this is not a Calio classified, like in the thing, but for the right type of people. And again, that's why I'm part of the mastermind, for the right type of people that know what they want, and they can really be a solution. And that's one of the reasons for me, I always talk about information and partners. And I think my job is to go out and find the right partners. I don't, if you talk to me about tax and structuring and pension funds, like, I've got no idea, literally no idea. But what we are good at is going and finding the right partners to help people with, in that process. And that's one of the reasons why I so appreciate the partnership we've got with Calio, But yeah, just that human experience, I just want to, highlight what you've spoken about. The financial returns, hopefully for you and the family will come. But it's the human part that you've been through. Now it's the financial part in terms of the execution,
No, definitely, Scott. I mean, it is so stressful not to know where to go. To have financial partners and advice. I mean, just the connections that you gave us with Calio and others, bring us in contact with these people to understand it. It makes a world of a difference. It takes a lot of stress off your shoulders, weight. It's actually a very positive experience, especially in the world now with all these uncertainties. But from a human side, I mean, this was a phenomenal experience. And it happened so fast for us. But we were ready for it. I mean, because we've been sitting on this for 1.5 years, just frustrated, don't know what to do. But I believe, going forward, it's going to work out. Whatever is going to happen on the financial side, I feel that we have proper partners in you and in the mastermind and with Calio. It's a very positive experience. It's a positive, relaxing feel. We've been through a very difficult three months now with all the administration to do these things, to move it, to shift properties. But it's almost done, and we can see the end. So, yeah, I think it's worth it. Definitely worth it.
My last question to you, and I know you joined Wealth Going Global originally, and you made me this comment here, something along the lines of listening to all the Zoom meetings has made a huge difference understanding the investment options. I don't feel stupid anymore when having discussions with the likes. Of course, I don't know enough, but at least I can follow opinions, comments without being completely in the dark. It's so liberating. Just talk to us a little bit about that evolution. I don't know what you want to call it, but it's like learning investment language, like learning Mandarin, like whatever, and almost having the peace of mind to talk about it now. What's that been like in terms of, because you've obviously been, and again, to be clear to you and for everyone else, this doesn't happen by random. Nielsen and his wife have invested their time and their energy to come and do Wealth Going Global and to learn the lingo and to be part of the mastermind. Like, it's not like a little, a microchip that you just stick in your head, but you've been prepared to put in the effort. And what's it been like learning that language? Like,
no, just Scott, to be honest with you, I mean, we thought we knew some things about investments and financials, but obviously in a specific asset class or two. But you tend to, if you don't understand something, you tend to avoid it. And we knew that we basically knew 5% of what we should, just on a basic level, and just to learn the terminology or understand it when someone speaks on a webinar or something and they say something, you immediately know what it is. It makes it so easy to engage and learn more. It's not a struggle anymore, because we found it as a struggle. You read these things, you immediately lose interest. You don't understand it. You don't know what it's about. You don't know the risks. It's just too much, and we found that it was made quite, you presented it on a very basic level initially, and then you got your discussions on a specific asset class. It's still on a basic level, but it made sense for us. And it's actually very nice now to go and listen to any webinar and all these words pop up and you just know what it is. It falls in place. And it literally took us 2 months to understand the basics. I would still say we are very, very, very beginners in this terms. but it's not our field. We are not financial advisors. We don't work in the financial world, and we have to rely on other people to do it, and to advise us. But just to understand what they're talking about has made things incredibly more clear over the last 2 months. It's actually a wonderful experience. I'm glad I basically skipped all the Wealth Global seminars in the beginning and just moved straight to the masterclass. I could do it because I had some experience. That is also true. But I still follow the Wealth Going Global as well, so I'm still in both and still learning. And but my opinion is it's worth it.
Awesome.
As soon as you can, get as much of yes, and even when you do the seminars, we sometimes don't understand it, in the mastermind, and then I just go through it again and I sort it out, and that helps so much, But after repeating it 4, 5, or 6 times and bring up the terminology, it sticks, and then it becomes clear. It becomes easier. It's basically repetition of a lot of things. So yes, very positive.
Awesome. Well, Niels, thanks so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. For me, I always think there's real value in real people, real stories. And, a lot of people hear Anthony talk. I've sort of already mentioned this, and they literally go into overwhelm. And we've all been there, literally every single one of us. So I just wanted to kind of share your experience, and I really deeply appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And thanks to you and Catherine, and I look forward to seeing your results,
Thank you, Scott. And just one comment. You will feel overwhelmed. Most people do. There's nothing wrong with that. Just be open to ask, and just do the repetition. Just follow the course. Go watch the video clips. It will stick somewhere, and it will start making sense.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Niels. Appreciate
Thanks,
it. So don't you enjoy that? Real people, real stories. I just love sharing the real people's stories, because kind of anyone can kind of sit here, me or Alex or anyone else, and kind of tell you, oh yeah, but other people are doing it. Whereas it's actually so nice to be able to kind of get a sense of what's happening. Now, I wanted to introduce another little guest who is over here, sitting right here. It's my son, John T. So he's been listening to the whole lot, which is fantastic. So anyway, I just wanted to, it's wonderful to have him. And he just did something incredible where he set himself a task. I won't say what it was, but it was a personal mission where he went through a fear factor and achieved it. So very proud of him. Okay, so if I go to sharing screens here, what you basically got is this is the formula. So this is what Niels was talking about. This is that implementation, which is so important. And again, I remind you of the 3 ways to get results. Get what you want, figure out a way to be resourceful and get what you want, get the knowledge. And if you don't know it all yourself, get it through partnership. And again, hopefully what Niels just shared is how you can literally do it, and then get the time that you want. So create the time that you want. And I want to share a personal story of how I did this. So this was me on stage in 2011, I think it was. And this is Roger Hamilton. He actually listed his company on the New York Stock Exchange. That's Brian Walsh, who runs The Real Success. And what was really interesting is that I got invited to this event, and then Roger was telling us about his mastermind. And I was like, oh, but I don't have time to come to your mastermind, Roger. I'm busy. I'm trying to run a business. I don't have time. And it was really interesting for me because he said to me, no, but Scott, but I've got the answers for you. Like if you come to the mastermind, I'll teach you how you can get your time back. And long story short, I think it cost $12,500 in 2011 to join the mastermind. So I did. And he was right. I mean, it truly did give me my time back. And he taught me some incredible gifts. And then he was actually the reason why in 2015, I managed to get invited to Necker Island. And this was just some fun pictures of me in Necker Island. This was a dress-up party, relaxing. This was a race we were doing around Necker Island, sitting up right at the top in the hot tub. And the only reason I show you these pictures are because I didn't think I had the time. And one of the biggest excuses Alex and I face all the time, and I'm sorry, but I use the word excuse, is people are like, oh, I'd love to join the mastermind. I'd love to have a family office, but I don't have the time. And I'm like, well, my own personal experience was I also didn't have the time. And then I made the time. I learned the lessons. I set myself up, for success. And then it actually gave me back my time. And I think that's really important. There's a great little video that I'll, Alex, if you can just make a note there, I'll share it on the in the school group for people of my experience on Neck Island in terms of that process. So I want to kind of finish with a question for you, and it's a question for you of, do you want to get out of your comfort zone? So one of the things that I think that's important is that, I was put on this planet to get people out of their comfort zone, and this is kind of where the magic lives. So I'd love to know for people if you'd like me to kind of, I'd like your permission, where I want to kind of give you an example of how you can get out of your comfort zone going into 2025. Anyone else? Lots of people are saying hi, Jonty. Hello. Cool. Okay. So let me share with you how to get out of your comfort zone. So firstly, people are 5 times more committed to their own ideas. So this is really important, okay? Like, I can tell you what to do, but if you come up with your own plan, you're going to be 5 times more committed to your plan than if I told you what to do. Secondly, you're here to get results. So it's all about the results at the top. But actually, all the stuff that's below is motivations, emotions, values, thinking, assumption, bias, judgments, things like it sounds too good to be true, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what's important is that 95% of the population is in an away state, withdrawn, fearful, inability to make good choices, demotivated, et cetera, et cetera. 95%. And the question is how to be in a towards state. Happy, ability to think clearly, creative, see new opportunities. And I believe there's only 2 ways to be in a towards state. The first is to get in a group of like-minded people. So if you've got a group of like-minded people going in the same direction, the chances are you're going to be pulled along in terms of that momentum. And the second is that you get very clear on your outcome. So this is a model that both Alex and I have been trained in. We're both certified international coaches. And most people are caught up in problems and drama. We call this the lighthouse model. And what's important is you get very clear on your top 3 outcomes. What are your top 3 outcomes? And I'm a big believer in coaching. I've done coaching literally since my early 20s. I've always believed no matter what I did in life, if I wanted to succeed, I needed to find a coach. I mean, if you look at the top sportsmen in the world, the top business people, literally the top sports teams, every single successful team or person on this planet has a coach. And then the question I have for people is, well, do you have a coach? But what was fascinating for me is that in 2011, when I joined Roger Hamilton's mastermind, I realized that there was even more power in a mastermind than there was in a coach, just in one-to-one coaching. And I couldn't understand why until I found this video. So I want to play this video for you.
Now, this is extremely predictable. There's tons of research around it. Humans change 5 times faster in groups than they do with a one-on-one coach, consultant, or therapist in that case.
Wow.
So I started looking back at business models and people who had done this effectively over the generations. Masterminds aren't new, folks. They're not new at all. People have been doing this for thousands of years. And when you put a collection of people together who are all committed, all driven, and all so want to make the right changes happen, and you give them a leader to follow who's willing to get in the trenches with them, all of a sudden you start finding real, rapid life or business transformation.
So let's look at what he said there. There's tons of research. Humans change 5 times faster in groups than they do with a one-to-one coach. But you need a collection of people who are all committed, all driven, and so want to make the right changes happen, and give them a leader to follow who's willing to get in the trenches with them. And all of a sudden you start finding real, rapid life and business transformation. And so when people say, why do you need to sit down with Alex or myself one-to-one? Because our job is to make sure that we're getting the right collection of people who are committed, that are going in the same direction. And I'm super, super grateful that as part of our mastermind, we've got about 90 people from all over the world, an incredible group of people from America, from England, from Spain, Portugal, Italy, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, Zambia, Swaziland. We've got a mixture of men and women. We've got a mixture of age groups. I think the youngest is 39 and the oldest is in their early 80s. And just the most incredible group of people, everything from highly sophisticated business people, accountants, lawyers, doctors, farmers, teachers. We've even got a plumber, just to give you an example. And it's just an amazing group of people. But it's this power, like you go 5 times faster if you're in a group of like-minded people. But it's important to get the right type of people. And then it's also important to have a leader that's going to jump in the trenches with them and basically do what it takes. Alex and I always joke, do you want the carrot or do you want the stick? Either way, we're getting the result for you. You get to choose. And that's what our mastermind is all about. That's why we built the mastermind. It's now been going since October 2022. So it's 2 years and, I don't know, a quarter if you want to, just over 2 years. We call it Private Wealth Global. It's about getting results safely and simply, and it's a partnership. It's a direct partnership where we work with our family office, between our family office and Wealth Migrate, where we kind of work together. The focus is globally diversified passive income and portfolio growth. We do it by copying the formula, diversifying across countries, currencies, assets, partners, and time. It's all about passive income. And then the what we do is breaking down. So we get clear on your goals. We then meet monthly to check in and make sure that you're on track from an accountability perspective, and then you've got your tasks and activities. And to give you a little bit of a breakdown, and I don't want to go into this in too much detail today. I know that I've already shared a huge amount with you today, but what we did as a team is we mapped the family office. So I told you already today, the family office managed over $700 million. They've got about 65 clients. And we sat down, and I've worked with them now since 2012. So it's more than 10 years. And we said, what are all the things that they are doing to help people when they invest? And we realized that there's 9 steps to generational wealth. 9 steps. Okay. And that's really important. So there's basically phase 1, which is all about the setup. There's phase 2, which is all about planning. And there's phase 3, which is all about results. And I'm going to take you quickly. I don't have time today to go into them in detail, but I'm going to take you quickly through each one of the steps. Would you like to see the steps, just of my interest? Like, we can stop now, I can give you the homework and we can go home. Or would you like me to just teach you quickly what are the 9 steps that they're doing with regards to the generational wealth? Yep. So Z said yes. Shona said yes. Okay, cool. Okay, I'll go through them quickly. I'm conscious of people's time, but I don't want you to feel cheated, because this is what the wealthiest people are doing in the world. And our philosophy is we might as well just copy them in terms of that process. So phase 1, which is all about the setup. The first thing is establishing your vision. So again, it's very important to get clear on what is your long-term goal. Not what do you want by the end of 2025, but where do you want to be in the next 5, 10, 15 years? What's your long-term goal of what you're trying to achieve? And that's how we use our outcome model. So it's what we use with our lighthouse approach in terms of getting very clear on what are your top 3 outcomes you're trying to achieve. So I take you on a personal one-to-one journey, and we get clear on what are your top 3 outcomes, what are your top 3 priorities, and what are your top 3 measures. You'll be amazed the noise that people have in their head. And when you remove the noise, you get clarity, and you literally write them down. You're like, right, here's an example. So I'll just give you an example, because I was actually working on mine right now. So you got your 2025 word for the year, you got your top 3 outcomes, your top 3 priorities, and then your top 3 measures. So you get very clear in life on what are you doing, how are you doing it, and why are you doing it. And as I said, Alex and I are both certified in doing this. This is what a lady had to say about this process.
Hi, Scott. This is just a quick fan message. Just wanted to thank you again for our coaching call the other day. And then also wanted to thank you for the brilliant idea of that, sort of publicly putting in your goals in that Google Sheet. I see that the Google Sheet magically populated itself since the first time I saw it. And I must say the 2024 goals are very inspiring. And it's amazing to see. I found it incredibly supportive to see, people's just the amount of energy and the goals. And it's really inspiring. So just wanted to thank you for that. I really enjoyed reading everybody's goals. I haven't read all of them, but and somehow it's just really helpful. All right, well, have a fantastic day, and we'll see you in February. Bye.
So simplicity is power. Take the noise out of your head. we help members get very clear on their top 3 outcomes, top 3 priorities, and top 3 measures without feeling overwhelmed. Number 2 is about your investment solutions. So this is where you actually get access to our private investment opportunities, and you've got the Calio private equity due diligence, you got a 50% discount on the fees, and you got the private banking service. So that is our Private Wealth Global, which is our sort of private banking platform. And what you basically help you do here is we help you invest simply and safely in high quality opportunities, all in one place without any complexity. Then we go to number 3, the investor profile. And this is the Enneagram in wealth. Now, as you know, within Wealth Hackers, there's an entire course on this, but you'll see that there's 27 different tri-types. And depending on what your numbers are, and this is what Anthony was talking about, depending on what your numbers are, it actually helps them know what you should be investing in. And each person gets a report in terms of who are you as an investor, what should you be looking at, what type of investments make sense for you. You'll get some real understanding in terms of who you are and generally the mistakes you've made in the past, which is really important. And the feedback from people in this has been phenomenal. What is the Enneagram of Wealth? It helps members gain clarity and insights into what motivates them, enabling a more effective decision-making process for investments. So that's your setup. Then it's about your planning. So your portfolio health check is where you go and sit with our family office. And it's just like when you go see a doctor and you have a health check. They basically look at everything. So that's why you heard from Niels today. And they go and review everything, your tax, your structuring. If you've got properties, whether they're in South Africa or England or Australia or America or whatever, and they look at the properties. Are these properties working for you? Are they good properties? Are they bad properties? What do I do with them? My pensions, is my pension working? Are my investments working? As you said, Neil said they had a 45% overlap, which is effectively inefficiency. So a portfolio health check gains insight and clarity into your entire portfolio without massive overwhelm and anxiety, which enables the team to optimize your portfolio. So, it's about looking at what you have and making sure that it's being optimized. I love that word, optimized. And, it's really important to have everything in one place without so much duplication between the different advisors. We've simplified our admin, tax, and structures. And, again, people are wanting to move away from complexity and move to simplicity. Number 5, portfolio optimization. So now we know what you've got. Now it's about having a plan. And you've sat today, Anthony's explained to you how to do this with the asset liability modeling. But you basically got an asset liability model, you've got your Enneagram profile, and you've got your individual circumstances. You might be an American living in Portugal. And then ultimately, that's how you build your portfolio. And, they build out an entire portfolio, and whether it's in rands, dollars, pounds, euros, depending on where you live in the world, then they build out that portfolio for you. So your portfolio optimization is all around peace of mind. It's knowing that you've got a resilient investment portfolio. Then you've got number 6, your wealth, your lifestyle, and your legacy plan. And this is where David Lipschitz actually shares all about generational wealth. Something that Alex and I found and Shane found amazing was that almost everyone that's part of the mastermind, without fail, has wanted to look at generational wealth. How do they hand their money over? How do they hand it to their children and possibly their children's children? How do they set themselves up for success? How do they have the conversations? How do they teach their children about money? And that's what this whole module is about in terms of that process. So it enables our members to create a clearly defined step-by-step action plan for their wealth, their lifestyle, and their legacy. Then you go to your results. And this is where you go to your accountability, your mindset, and your execution. So what I found in life is that most people want results, but like I just showed you, it's all the stuff below the iceberg, the emotions, the values, the thinking, the assumptions, the bias. And again, most people are in this away state. Like if you're just given a plan and you go away and you're all on your own, like investing and finances is very lonely. But what about if you're in a toward state? What about if you're clear on your outcomes and you've got a group of like-minded people where you're literally working and you're in that toward state? Well, you not only got your long-term goals, but you got your, which are your top 3 outcomes, but you got your monthly. You need to check in monthly. So I learned this originally from Roger Hamilton. There's so much power in checking in every month with your outcomes to get that predictable momentum. And this is the accountability that so many people need. So we've got an accountability tracker. We do it in a group environment. We literally check in every month. Where are you at? Are you on track with regards to your outcomes, your priorities, and your measures? What are you focusing on this month? Have you achieved it? Yes, no, etc. in terms of group accountability. And individuals report that having a coach is helpful for them. 95% reporting that it is very helpful. 96% reporting that they would engage in it again in terms of that process. And we actually have a model to enable people we call it our stakes model, to help people get momentum each and every month. And then some people want to do, so that's transactional coaching. Some people want to do transformational coaching, and that's where they actually work with me one-to-one on a monthly basis. And I actually use a template where every month I sit with them one-to-one and we look at their priorities, their goals, their outcomes, their measures, and we make sure that we keeping them holding their feet to the fire and getting the results that they want. So that's, it's some people want to work with me one-to-one. So it's something that we offer for people. And there's plenty of examples out there. This is a lovely testimonial I was given from Angie, a lovely successful lady out of Cape Town. She said, thanks again so much for our session. I always leave feeling re-energized, motivated, and feeling good about what I've accomplished. And you offer for me to make recommendations on how you can help me to enhance my experience. It's highly appreciated. You rock. So yeah, I love, it's lovely getting feedback. And then you got the daily activities, and there's a bunch of tools that we've got to help people with regards to their habits, and then also with regards to time management. I always laugh with people like, how many of you struggle with time management? Like almost every single person that I coach struggles with time management. I don't care how successful they are. So we've got tools to help people set themselves up for success and really win in terms of that process. So accountability, mindset, and execution is about providing our members with tools, resources to achieve ongoing measurable performance. Then you've got community partners and knowledge transfer. And this is where we've got the community learning platform. And we literally got calendar and events there, the accountability, the community engagement, and most importantly, the interactive community-based learning. And every single, you can go along here. So we've got the mastermind community-based learning environment. So you've got the community. You can go in and you can, interact with the different community members. You've got the classroom. So you've got access to all the different materials. But more importantly, we take you through the 9 steps. So you literally got the logical 9-step process. So setup, planning, and results. So it's very logical and systemated. You got the calendar, so you got access to when all the different events are. As I say, we happen monthly. And then you've got the different members that you can interact with and engage with, et cetera, et cetera. So that's that. And then once a month, we check in with our family office. So that's actually for us, it's next Wednesday. So it's the middle Wednesday of every month. We check in. I always say to people, give me a TED talk. So Anthony comes, gives us a TED talk. What do I need to know about the market? What's happening in the market? Where, what's happening with interest rates going up or down, inflation, crises, wars, Trump getting into power on the 20th of January, America first. What does that all mean? Then we go through portfolio construction. We look at deals. We got a financial understanding. So, on next week, we've got a guy called James Painter coming to give us a market update on where we see 2025 going. It's going to be an incredible experience for our mastermind members. We invest and we review in terms of the process. So what's it all about? In simple terms, you can see people saying, mind-blowing, very valuable, extremely enlightening, love the perspective. But it's all about enhancing your knowledge, investing in quality partners, and empowering themselves to increase their confidence and make better decisions for them and their families. So, for us, you can't pass this test. It never ends. It's a journey. And so this is an ongoing engagement where we're checking in monthly, we're learning monthly, we're investing monthly, and we're on a journey together. And then finally, number 9, it's about the deals. Through quality investments and partners, we enable our members to achieve results in globally diversified passive income and portfolio growth. So that's the overall. And I'll play a video for you tomorrow. Cynthia is actually a teacher, but she said, thank God for the mastermind, the partners it brings us, and the exponential learning curve that has gifted us. Just to give you an idea, we got 3 different streams of our mastermind. So we got the 6K club. That's people that want to earn at least 6K in passive income. And that's people that are generally a retail investor or a mom and pop investor, and they want to evolve to being a sophisticated investor. It's about mastering their portfolio. Then we got the 12K club. That's people who want to earn at least 12K in passive income or portfolio growth. They're high net worth and want to become a global investor. And it's about global diversification. And then we've got the 24K club. And again, 24K in passive income or portfolio growth. And they're the generational wealth investor. They want to ensure their legacy. And one of the cool things that we started last year that we're doing again this year is what we call Wealth Weekends. So our masterminds get exclusive access to our Wealth Weekends. We did one in Franschhoek and Stellenbosch in March 2024. An incredible group of people, and Anthony came and actually went through the 6 steps to wealth. And then in August, we did one in the Cradle of Humankind, which is the oldest remains of human remains in the world. And Garth was teaching people about the 6 pillars to wealth. Karen was teaching people about the Enneagram and wealth. David was teaching people about generational wealth. And we had lots of fun game drives and watching rugby. And it was an incredible experience with an incredible group of people. And if you want to join us this year, the next one will be in March. It's in Knysna, South Africa, which is one of the most beautiful places in South Africa. So highly recommend that you come and join us in South Africa in March. And then we'll be doing the Algarve in Portugal in September. So for those of you based in England and Europe and America and whatever, if you want to come to the Algarve, we'll be doing it there. So just as a reminder to finish off, if you're part of the mastermind, you get access to everything. So it's like being first class on an airplane. So you'll get access to wealth hackers. You'll get access to immigration agents if you want. You'll get first access to buyers trips when we do it. And if it is something of interest, it's not for everyone. We fully understand. You can't buy your way into the mastermind. It's by application only. But if you are interested, you literally go to diversificationmastermind.com. And what you do is you set up a meeting. You'll meet with Alex or myself. And what we're trying to do is just understand, what is it you're trying to achieve? And it's really important for us. We want to understand what you're trying to achieve. And then we're looking for not only trying to understand what you're trying to achieve, but whether we can help you. It's a symbiotic relationship. It's really important that we understand what you're trying to achieve and that we believe we can help you, because we're here to help you get results. So you literally go to that link, diversificationmastermind.com. Maybe, Alex, if you could just chuck it in the chat box, I'd appreciate that. In terms of the process, we do actually guarantee results. So I know Alex and I argue about this all the time. He's like, hey, you can't guarantee results. The point being is that as part of our mastermind, we say to people, join and we'll work with you. As long as you're doing what you said you're going to do on a monthly basis, we'll work with you until you get that result. So, it's an important concept where we put our money and our time where our mouth is. And it's about alignment. So you're making a commitment, we're making a commitment, and we're working with you until we get you that result, which to my knowledge is unheard of in this industry. But again, between ourselves, our family officers, partners, we want to make sure that people know that, we're not just accepting anybody. We're accepting people that we like, we believe we can help, where we are aligned. And then, it's about getting you that result in terms of that process. And for the financially minded people that say, yeah, but what about return on investment? I had a guy that had $12,000, because some people say, oh, but I don't have enough money. Well, this gentleman had $12,000, okay? And he currently had it in a financial institution here in South Africa. He was getting about 7%. Now, on average, we've got about 14% between ourselves and our family office over the last 10 years. So I said to him, okay, well, let's take your $12,000. And if you were to invest $12,000 upfront or $1,000 a month, it's $12,000, same thing. And if you were to invest $6,000 to be part of the mastermind, as an example, so you invest $6,000 in yourself to be part of the mastermind, would it make sense to you? Well, over 5 years, it's you can see the calculations here on the left-hand side. Like over 1 year, it doesn't really make sense. But over 5 years, it's 182% return. And that is about $10,991. So, if you went to, that's taking a time value of money. So that's in today's money. So like if I said to you, if you were going to invest $6,000 and over the next 5 years, in today's money, you were going to get nearly $11,000, it's kind of a no-brainer in terms of that process. Over 10 years, it now equates to $48,000. which is an 800% return. And over 30 years, if you're starting to look at generational wealth, then it's close to $750,000. What's that? Okay, I'll need to sort it out. Just give me 5 minutes. Okay, in terms of that process. So if you want to apply, then maybe Alex, if you could do me a favor, why don't you just come and talk a little bit as well? Because I mean, you're one of my partners in the mastermind. And before I go into kind of some stories, I'd love you to kind of share your concept and perspective. I know you're dying of COVID, but I apologize for throwing you on the spot. But I think it'd be fascinating for people just to hear from you about the mastermind. I know it's one of the things that you and I are most grateful for, and we love offering it to the right type of person because we believe we've built something to solve people's problems.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Yeah, I'm that type of person that wants to kick off the year extra strong. And this year, fate told me, no, you will go slow. So anyway, I went to the doctor, got some nice meds, so I'm feeling much better in that sense. Yeah, so Scott, I think we've done this multiple times now where we go to our clients, our shareholders, our investors, and we talk about portfolio construction. We talk about the needs of the clients, where they have money, what do they want to invest in. And we have all of our sponsors from America, from the US, scattered around the US, and then our clients, or our sponsors rather, from the UK. And then we have these conversations with people at their houses, at restaurants, I'm sure I saw a lot of names on today, which I've seen in person actually. And we talk about all of this theory, but it's never really come to one point and to a entire journey. And that's why I'm so grateful that about 3 years ago, we started talking about this concept of putting together a whole package for clients to literally be able to join and then have this entire process where they go from being completely overwhelmed, completely confused, having 3 or 4 different opinions and different outcomes for their portfolios, 3 different advisors, to being where they have an entire holistic view of firstly what they want to achieve in their portfolios. It's not just about, I should be investing in this deal, or I should be investing in this deal. It's actually what is the entire outcome of this entire portfolio. So I think that really, with that kind of context and with that fundamentals, we go to where we are right now. And we've done all of these training sessions where we have these webinars, masterclasses, we have these workshops, all to try and articulate the important fundamentals of what our clients needs to know. And it actually all comes together at the mastermind. So that's why I'm so grateful. I mean, we're very close to hitting 3 digits now. I think we're about 6 or 7 people away from hitting 100. So I'm really excited. Then we'll have 100 members in our mastermind. And really the crux of that has been great, because you see these families come in, they go through this entire 9-step process, and by the end, they're set up for success effectively. So yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward. I had 2 meetings yesterday. I have 1 meeting booked for today. So I'm really looking forward to engaging with our members online and seeing, what is the outcomes? What are you trying to actually achieve within your portfolio within the next 6 to 12 months? And maybe it's mastermind, at that level with the help that you need, or maybe it's at the wealth hackers, or maybe it's, just using the platform to actually invest in our deals. So it all kind of depends on what you need. Where, it's great listening to us speak for 10, 20 hours, but it's not about us. It's all about you, and why we're here is to support our community. So yeah, Scott, I think that kind of encapsulates why I'm so passionate about what we do at the mastermind level, and why we're here speaking to all of these names on a screen. So back to you.
Awesome. No, thanks, Alex. Appreciate it. So if you're interested and you want to have a chat with myself or Alex, literally go to diversificationmastermind.com, and then you can set up. It's an automatic link. It takes about half an hour, and it's my only request is if you do book it, please make sure you turn up, etc. Alex's time's valuable, my time's valuable, etc. Just to show you here, this is how we used to do it in the old days. So before we had things like technology and masterminds and whatever, you used to have to jump on a plane, and this was us in New York going on buyers trips. This was us in Times Square with a different group of people. This was me with Dr. Dolph DeRuis in Phoenix buying properties on the steps of the auction house, having some fun in the Grand Canyon, having a drink down at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, going to a show in Vegas, buying houses in Atlanta, buying more houses. This guy here, interesting enough, came on a buyer's trip when he was 22 years old. He's now about 32, and he's facilitated over $1 billion of real estate in America. It's an amazing story in America. In the old days, you used to have to open bank accounts. You don't have to do any of that now. But this was us flying over to America, meeting partners on the ground. Again, we now bring the partners to you online. But you used to have to fly over and go meet them and see who the partners were, having some fun on Beale Street, the New York Stock Exchange, up in North Dakota where the oil comes from, and having some fun at the Oktoberfest. Not Oktoberfest, what's it called? Halloween, in terms of that process. This is another idea of partnership. These three gentlemen are some of the wealthiest gentlemen in Africa. They run the single biggest privately owned retail shopping center network in Africa. And yet they knew they couldn't do it themselves. They did it all through partnership, coming and doing things with partners. So why we believe you should work with us? In simple terms, like there's plenty of other platforms out there. There's plenty of other people that talk about money out there. And there's plenty of reasons why people don't become a global citizen, don't invest, don't get passive income, don't get portfolio growth. But the three major ones I remind you are that you don't have the money, you don't have the knowledge, and you don't have the time. And hopefully today I've shown you that it's not about the money. Whether you get started at the passive income challenge, literally with $97, whether you get chartered with wealth hackers, or whether you get started the mastermind, like we've got three different levels. The airplane's going from Sydney to London, and whether you get on an economy class or business class or first class, it's a different value of service, obviously, but the airplane's still going from A to B in terms of that process. And I remind you of the three ways to get the results. It's get what you want, get the knowledge, and get the time that you want. And for us, the one thing that I think differentiates us over anyone that I've seen anywhere else, I know Alan's online and I'm sure would attest to this, is that we offer global diversification. I'm not aware of anywhere else as a platform that helps people invest in different countries, different currencies, different assets, different partners, and across time. And also, I've never found a family office that's been democratized. So we've used technology and our relationship with our family office to democratize access to the family office, which only people that are part of the mastermind get access to. And I wouldn't tell you to do something that I haven't done myself. I spent $14,000 to be part of Peter Diamante's Singularity University. I spent $25,000 to be part of Roger Hamilton's Entrepreneur Network. I spent $40,000 to be part of Mavericks, which is how I got to be with Richard Branson. And I spent $50,000 to be with Tony Robbins. So I've invested a lot of money in my personal development, and I wouldn't have done it if it was a waste of money. Like every single time, it's how I've geometrically moved forward. So to conclude for the day, that's the formula. I know I repeat it over and over again. You can do it yourself if you want. You can have your hand held with regards to the mastermind and the process. And, for us, our mastermind is our private wealth global solution. It's the enhanced partnership between Calio and ourselves, and it's all about getting results safely and simply. There's 9 steps that we take you through. It's simple, it's easy, it's literally, you're over here, this is what you want to achieve, this is where you are, you need a plan from A to B, we hold you accountable along the plan, and you've got a like-minded group of people where you work in that plan and you're investing on a monthly basis. And there's a whole bunch of bonuses. You get all the learning courses that we've spoken about are included, the immigration agents, you get access to the wealth weekends, you get access to the buyers trips, etc. So if it is something of interest to you, just go along and apply, diversificationmastermind.com. Here's a few more pictures of us having some fun. Times Square, an ice hockey game, Madison Square Gardens, the New York Stock Exchange, buying commercial properties, buying more houses, having some fun again at a party, meeting the partners. You can see how we used to do this in the old days. And the beauty with technology is we've now made it accessible to you from the comfort of your couch, wherever you are in the world. More commercial buildings we were buying. This was us sitting with some of the partners. We've done over $100 million worth of deals with this guy, Paul Shalanda. This was Dr. Dolph Duras, talking to him, the guy from Real Estate Riches. More commercial properties. This was actually us in Hong Kong on a buyer's trip, going to Hong Kong to buy property in Hong Kong in terms of that process. More commercial property. Anyway, I think you get the point. We've simplified it, democratized it, and made it accessible to you. If you are interested, go along to diversificationmastermind.com, and the results, as long as you do what you say you're going to do and you work the plan, then we work with you until you get your results, which is why we say we guarantee the results. There's the formula. I believe you've got two options. The one option is you can have your excuses. I don't have money. I don't have knowledge. I don't have time. And you can 2025 will probably be the same as 2024 and 2023 and 2022 and 2021. You get the point. Or you can get what you want. You can get the knowledge and you can get the time. And, I've just got a picture of a happy family on a beach with peace of mind. We believe they're very stark difference in terms of the two. And I finished with a quote, which I love. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So you can do it all yourself if you want to. You can join the Wealth Hackers, which is a like-minded community. Or you can join the mastermind, where we hold your hand and it's done for you, with you, in a personalized way. It's your choice. As action steps for today, silver, research and identify at least 3 different investment strategies: passive investing, active investing, and value investing. Create a hypothetical diversified investment portfolio within asset classes and allocating percentages to the various asset classes, so a wealth plan. Consider the mastermind. So if you don't want to do number 1 and 2 above, or you don't know how to do number 1 and 2 above, then consider the mastermind and let the family office do it for you in a personalized way. And then, as always, share one key takeaway with everyone from the Wealth University group. So again, what did you learn today? What's your key takeaway? Not only are you adding value to them, but you're getting significant value for yourself. And Alan, I'm glad it's much clearer now. I'm glad it makes sense. And in terms of gold, research the different asset classes and their different historical performance, and research and compare the different investment vehicles. For the people in VIP, I'm about to share an incredible gift with you, because we've actually mapped all the different asset classes. We've mapped all the different timelines. We've mapped all the different returns, and I'll share it with you now in the VIP room for you. And then, if you want to go to the Next Steps Navigator, there's the link. Reminding you of the homework competition. So tomorrow we start upping the ante with the prizes. So come along and make sure that you do your homework and come join us in the VIP. And it's now time to go into the Q&A. I remind you of everything that you get in the VIP. It's not too late. There's still another 3 sessions. You'll get the recording from the previous 2, and you'll get all the other recordings in terms of the process. You can join the WhatsApp group. You can join the Facebook group. There's the formula. I do remind you of the passive income and literally how simple and easy it is for you. So the passive income challenge, which is the economy class, if you want to get started, you literally just go to the link below there, diversificationchallenge.com/passive income. And in 30 days, you will be earning a passive income. Or if you want to join Wealth Hackers, literally from $37, you get to be able to join our Wealth Hackers. And this for me is something quite exciting. And if you do it on an annual basis, you can actually save yourself 20%. I can see someone's just taking advantage of that. And then finally, that's our business class. And finally, if you want to be involved in our first class, which is where you work with us directly and you work with our family office, then you've got the mastermind. And so those are the 2 options. You can kind of keep doing what you've always done and expect different results, or you can have the peace of mind to know that you've got the partners on board and that you can get the results that you want. I remind you, it's all about the right information and the right partners. And in conclusion for today, as we go into tomorrow, tomorrow is all about finding the right partners. We got an incredible day tomorrow. We got some great partners that I interview, but most importantly, I'm going to teach you how to find the right partners. What are the lessons I've learned? What are the mistakes I've made? I've lost tens of millions of dollars making the wrong mistakes. What have I learned from that? What can I teach you so that you can avoid them in terms of that process? And as Nelson Mandela says, in terms of finding the right partners, that's obviously managing risk as well, because it's the single best way to manage risk is by finding the right partners. So, as Nelson Mandela said, money won't create success. The freedom to make it will. Thank you all for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I know, again, it's a lot of information. Alex and I were talking privately, and there's a part of me that, like, we should turn this into, a paid-for course, because there's so much value that we're trying to get across. But it's a difficult one, because we want to share with people, we want to teach you what you need to know, but we're also conscious of your time. And so, I don't know, it's a fine line between teaching you what you need to know and trying to manage it within the timelines, and also not going too fast, because I already probably go too fast in terms of all the different details. So anyway, thanks for your time. I will see the VIPs in the room now. We'll literally be pivoting to the room now to be able to answer any questions. And by the way, for the VIPs, I would strongly recommend that you join now, because there's a gift that I'm going to give you, which is a table that we've built of all the different asset classes, every single asset class that you can think of. And it's got the different timelines, the expected returns, the risk, everything. And it's a great, at school, you kind of got a cheat sheet, or at university, you got a cheat sheet. It's a great cheat sheet in terms of all the different asset classes. So I'll share that with the VIP members now. If it's not too late, if you want to join the VIPs, I know Alex put the link in there. Come and join us, and I will see you in the VIP room. Cheers. For Karun and stuff asking for the links, we'll put them into the WhatsApp group, so everyone's got them, and I'll also put them into the Wealth University group. Okay. Cool. Thanks, everyone. Bye.